In a world where everyone lives humiliating themselves just to survive, one ordinary man decided he had enough. Hong Xingwang was an exploited employee, working like a dog every day just to pay for his sick mother's treatment. Until one day, he finally snapped. He told his boss and the entire company to go fuck themselves. And at that exact moment, he awakened the ultimate wantless, godly rich system. The more he lives without caring about anyone's opinion, the more he spends, shows off, the richer he becomes. This is the most insane and addictive system ever created. Get ready, because today you're going to watch his complete rise from zero to the absolute top. Let's begin. The protagonist went to his boss saying that he had a family emergency and knew the department was very busy, but he promised he would only need 2 days off and, when he came back, he would make up for all the work he had missed. His boss asked if he was really talking about taking leave, because recently the company's new short video department had been particularly understaffed. So, except under special circumstances such as weddings or funerals, no other leave requests were approved. The boss was just enjoying some videos on his phone. The protagonist became a little irritated and said that his mother was sick and hospitalized, and she needed someone to take care of her. So, he asked him to make an exception. The boss continued acting as if nothing affected him, and asked whether the protagonist's father was still alive and whether, if he was not free, perhaps there was another relative who could help. The boss questioned whether the protagonist really needed to do everything himself. Besides, it was just an illness, and he could only ask for leave if it was something critical. The girl he was watching thanked him for the rocket he had given her earlier. The protagonist felt powerless because of that. His boss emphasized that he could not climb the hierarchy without making sacrifices, because he himself had worked overtime even during his father's funeral, and that was how he had gotten to where he was today. Besides, he wanted to know why young people nowadays were so delicate. Everyone wanted time off for illness, weddings, and relatives. If everyone took leave, how would the company be able to operate? The boss emphasized that, in the new media industry, opportunity was crucial. If the protagonist was not there, and someone delivered news about a video, who would take responsibility for the loss? For that reason, he should not ruin the performance of the entire department because of one person. The protagonist pointed out that he could work from home and stay focused on contact the entire time. The boss said he was already tired of trying to persuade the protagonist and that if he really wanted an easy life, he could simply resign. That way, he could settle his accounts, spend as much time as possible with his parents, and remain immature forever, just as he wanted. He stood up and said that he would be very clear with the protagonist because he was just someone who had graduated from a third-rate university and had only managed to get a job at the biggest media company in the city because the company urgently needed people and made an exception to hire him. Therefore, he should know that the least qualified people in that company came from top-tier universities, not to mention someone incredible like himself, who was bilingual. So he would tell the protagonist one more time not to be ungrateful and not to waste this opportunity by always trying to relax and avoid work. Trends would not wait for him, and neither would that position, so he could think about it if he still wanted to leave. Xingwang went to a table and started smoking a cigarette while thinking about life. Suddenly, his phone began to ring, and as soon as he answered, his father asked if he had time to come back. Suddenly, a nurse approached his father and asked when his wife's medical fees would be settled, because they had already been flexible enough so far, but with further delays, it would be difficult for them. The protagonist's father became worried and desperate, saying that he would resolve it in a few days. But the nurse pointed out that he had said the same thing a few days earlier, and that, if it was not resolved this time, the patient would have to be discharged. The protagonist's father said he understood. The protagonist, who had been listening to everything, was surprised, and his father apologized, saying he had been busy, then asked what he had said. Xingwang knew very well what he needed to do and told his father that he would return in a few days and cover the medical expenses. His father told him not to worry because he had already borrowed money from relatives and friends, and his mother had medical insurance, which would cover quite a lot. But the protagonist insisted, saying that he would cover what was missing and that his father did not need to borrow from relatives or worry too much about the situation, because he would solve everything. His father remained worried, saying that the protagonist had only graduated recently, and that the cost of living in Sang City was very high, so what savings could he possibly have? His father told him not to suffer because of this and not to take out risky loans, because if he really could not come back, it was fine, and he did not need to push himself too hard. The protagonist remained firm in his decision and told his father that it was fine because he had money, then hung up the phone. He looked at his bank account and thought that he had been working for a year and a half, and although his monthly salary was only 5,000, he saved a lot by sharing a bunk bed with other people. Besides, he only spent 10 yuan on takeout food and sometimes earned some extra money editing videos, so he had managed to save 50,000. He took a deep breath and thought that this amount should cover his mother's medical expenses, at least for a while. He had lived for more than 20 years and had never done anything out of line, but today he needed to make a decision against his ancestral values. There were many job opportunities, but his parents could not wait for that, so he was resigning because staying in such an inhuman company was horrible. He went to HR and 20 minutes later, he was officially unemployed. However, he became worried, thinking that in this job market and economic climate, he had still dared to resign without another job lined up, and that he really was being reckless, but there was not much he could do. Suddenly, a system screen appeared saying that the Ultimate Freedom System had been activated because the host had made a decision against the will of his ancestors by abandoning his job, and the reward for that was 88,888 yuan. Xingwang was surprised, asking what that was, and questioned who was watching videos so loudly on their phone because it was buzzing inside his brain. However, the same sound from before and the screen appeared again, calling the protagonist Master and asking him to check his reward money, because now he could freely satisfy himself. The more he satisfied himself, the more money he would have, and for that reason, he needed to keep going. Xingwang still did not understand anything, asking what that interface appearing right in front of him was. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, and as soon as he looked at the notification, he saw that it said his savings card ending in 5,910 had received a deposit of 88,888 yuan on January 20th, 2024, and that his current balance was 138,888.80 yuan. This was so surprising that the protagonist thought it might be some kind of scam. He was shocked by his new balance, and the system appeared again, telling him not to doubt it because he had awakened the system so he could start enjoying himself. The protagonist thought that if he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not believe it, because it was truly hard to believe that something like this was happening to him. He continued looking at his phone while questioning whether he had really awakened a system. The system was called the Ultimate Freedom System, and apparently he had activated it by resigning from his job. After analyzing it for a while, he thought that maybe he had gotten the hang of how to use that system, and that now he needed to find a good opportunity. Suddenly, a girl dressed in a well-behaved outfit approached the protagonist and asked what he was thinking about. She was Gao Wen, a contracted blogger and dancer with 8 million fans across all platforms. She asked the protagonist if he had already prepared the script for her next live stream. The protagonist tried to speak to her, but she came even closer, asking if he had managed to do it. But he was so lost in some things that he asked what she had just asked. She kept smiling and touched his face, saying that he seemed very distracted and that apparently he had finally opened his eyes to his older sister. Xingwang, a little embarrassed, said that apparently she still liked to keep joking about these things. She lay on top of him, saying that she had been going to ask him to get a few more scripts for her, because recently the followers who paid the most had relaxed, and the recharge flow had decreased slightly. The protagonist thought that the girl in front of him was the main female internet celebrity whose scripts he used to manage. On the internet, she was known as the sexiest dance goddess. But offline, in what would be considered real life, she was a friendly person and not arrogant at all, and both her flaw and her strength were that she loved teasing people. Xingwang apologized to her and explained that he had just resigned and would no longer be responsible for influencer scripts, and that the company would arrange a transfer. Gao Wen was a little shocked and asked why this had happened so suddenly. The protagonist continued packing his things while thinking that, although he knew that this girl did not look down on others, she still only gave him extra glances, because she knew he was familiar with influencer scripts and was the easiest and most accessible person for her. So, probably, after resigning, each of them would go their separate ways and there was not much that could be done. Xingwang smiled, thinking that his mind was clear now. Gao Wen went up to him again and, with an alluring look, asked if he really wanted to resign since she still greatly preferred the work he did and did not trust anyone else in that place. The protagonist explained that, unfortunately, he had already completed all the procedures. He thought that she was very close and needed to have some awareness, because if she got any closer, maybe he would not be able to control himself so well. Gao Wen also noticed that something was different and questioned herself as to why the protagonist had been acting so strangely lately, because before, whenever she acted cute, he would joke back with her. She continued trying to appeal to his sentimental side, asking if he was really going to leave her alone. She thought that this resignation had happened too suddenly and that something had probably happened. However, the protagonist thought that she was only being nice to him because she could see profit coming from him, so he needed to stay firm and not deceive himself. He explained to her that he wanted to give himself an extended vacation. Gao Wen threw herself into his arms and asked which company he was planning to go to, because maybe they would become competitors and her operations would be taken over by someone else, and who knew how long it would take her to get used to those other people. Xingwang began to feel his masculine instincts going out of control and thought that this was getting very exciting, and that way things would become a little complicated for him. However, he thought that with the system, he could easily become a billionaire, so he would be able to have any kind of beauty once that happened. This woman in front of him seemed to have worked very hard for this. He looked at her and said that maybe she needed to get some cosmetic maintenance done on her nose because it looked a little crooked. As soon as she heard this, she became embarrassed and asked if it was really crooked, grabbing a mirror and almost crying, thinking how that could be true because it was impossible. As soon as she looked in the mirror, she thought that indeed it seemed a little crooked, and the live stream was about to begin, so she needed to fix it as quickly as possible. The system appeared again, saying that this was incredible because the host had truly refused to be a beauty's little dog, expressing his true thoughts without hiding them, and that was very bold. For that reason, he had fulfilled the requirements of being sincere and open-minded, and his reward was 23,333. His phone received another notification. He looked at the deposit again, and now his balance had gone up to 162,221. He smiled, thinking that apparently this was what ultimate freedom meant. He just had to be himself and refuse to be a simp controlled by anyone else. That was the official rule of that system. Gao Wen thanked the protagonist for reminding her about her nose because she had not noticed it. She said that he had already emphasized that he had decided to resign, so she would not keep him there anymore because they would still have many opportunities in the future to work together. So, she would like to wish him a bright future. This made the protagonist surprised because he thought she should be furious after he talked about her nose, so why was she so calm? This left him confused, questioning whether she was pretending or being sincere. Gao Wen continued saying that she was saying this because they had been colleagues, and the protagonist had taken very good care of her for a long time, so today she would like to offer him a farewell dinner. And if he had trouble finding a job, he could just send her a message, because she knew some people in the industry. His skills were exceptional, and he would not struggle to find new opportunities. Xingwang thought that she probably knew about his poor academic background, and was worried that he would not find another job. So maybe her earlier words had not just been empty talk, and apparently she was indeed a kind and nice person. The protagonist decided to be kind as well and said that he was the one who should be offering her a farewell dinner, so how could he let her pay for it? But Gao Wen said that his salary was not that high and that he should save as much as he could. Xingwang said that he was the one leaving, so they did not need to be stingy this time. As she herself had said, they might work together in the future, so she could consider it his thanks for the help she was giving him. Gao Wen smiled and said that he was about to leave, and only now did she realize that she did not know him very well. The protagonist said goodbye, saying that he needed to take care of a few things, so he would go first, and as soon as she got off work, he would contact her. Already outside in the middle of the street, he began walking, thinking that previously he would have walked on foot. If possible, he would use public transportation, and if that still was not an option, he would avoid unnecessary fees. He would only take a taxi with other people when public transportation stopped running after 11 at night. Even taking a taxi was a luxury in his daily life, but today he could afford to choose the most expensive option, and he was going to enjoy it properly. He ordered the best ride-hailing car, and a car quickly stopped in front of him. The driver got out, saying that this was the Dida luxury ride, and very respectfully asked him to get into the car. Xingwang was surprised and thought that this was expected of a luxury car because it had arrived in less than 3 minutes. Those lines were smooth, and the sound of the engine warmed his heart. He remembered that before he would get depressed because it was already too late to find someone to split a taxi with him, and now he would probably have to walk home at midnight. But now what had happened to him was indeed a leap in social class, and today he was a different person. The driver got out of the car and opened the door for the protagonist, politely asking him to get in. The system appeared, saying that the user was feeling generous, paying for a taxi without even looking at the prices. Freely satisfying himself was what he needed to do, and the reward was 50,000. The driver asked the protagonist, just to confirm the itinerary, if he was going to Baoxing Street. Xingwang said yes and asked the driver to stop at the Laoxi pancake shop. The driver accelerated the car, saying that he would do everything perfectly. Meanwhile, the protagonist simply enjoyed the ride, thinking that the luxurious seat was something exceptional. A short while later, Xingwang arrived at his destination. The woman saw the protagonist and asked if he wanted the usual, a pancake without eggs and sausage. Xingwang said not this time because he wanted 2 extra eggs and 2 whole sausages. He thought that when his monthly salary was only 5,000, he spent 800 on rent and could not spend more than 20 on his daily meals. A basic pancake was 8 won, and he had never dared to add an egg. But today he did not care at all, and spending 15 on a single meal did not matter, because he had made it, leveled up, and could now spend 15 on one meal. Because not only was he able to add 2 eggs and put in 2 whole sausages, even he himself was feeling envious of him. The people around him were impressed when they saw that indeed he was spending more than usual. Some people were even envious, wondering when they would be able to show off like that. The system appeared saying that it was shocked because the user had not only added 2 eggs, but also added sausages to the pancake. A great leap in living standards, fully satisfying himself, and the reward was 20,000. While enjoying his pancake, he thought that this was an incredible afternoon. The satisfaction of having a big meal was indescribable, and next time he would add 5 eggs. Back when he was struggling, he had been so poor that he could not even entertain himself. And after he started working, he lacked both money and time. So what normal people did for fun was a mystery. While walking, he saw a company called K18. He found it strange how he could have forgotten, because now he had plenty of money and could go to the mall. Besides, he still needed to pay for a dinner with Gao Wen, and he had heard that expensive restaurants had dress codes. His current outfit was below standard, and now it was time to go shopping. He saw a designer store and was surprised, thinking that this was a big mall and was filled with the smell of oranges. But he did not know why the names of all the brands were in English, and he could not understand anything. He continued looking around, and a mall as big as that did not have the brands he was used to wearing. However, he stopped and thought that he still had the same poor man's mindset from before, and he should stop that once and for all. As soon as he entered a store, one of the receptionists said that a customer had just come in, but the other asked her friend to attend to him because she was busy. The receptionist who said she was busy looked at the protagonist and saw that he did not have a proper haircut, was wearing a bunch of trash, the style of his clothes was outdated, and his phone was not worth more than 500. Good bargain shoppers from street stores. His sneakers were also from a street store and were deformed from use. Because of that, none of the women went over to assist him, and the protagonist asked if no one was going to help him. He thought that although he did indeed look poor, the amount of snobs inside that place was far too obvious. To teach them a lesson, he pointed out that he was tired from work and had not had time to do any research, but he wanted to buy something that cost 150,000. However, since they were wasting his time, he would go to another store right next door. The attendants were surprised by this and rushed over to him, asking if he was looking for clothes or bags. Some of them even asked him to sit down and have some tea because they would bring the items for him to take a look. Xingwang thought that money definitely always spoke the loudest. After he finished shopping, the attendant said that he would always be welcome at any time. The protagonist thought that the service for rich people in luxury stores really was first class because he did not even need to carry his bags, since someone helped take them for him. The woman who was helping him called out to the protagonist and said that if he had time, he would be welcome to attend the jewelry appreciation event at the end of that month. Xingwang thanked her for the invitation and said that if he had time, he would come by to take a look. She smiled and asked if he would like all those items sent to his residence. Xingwang picked up his bags and said that there was no need because he liked doing his own things himself. The saleswoman continued smiling and told him to have a great day. As he was walking, he noticed 2 women talking. One of them said that there were designer stores in Longa Plaza and that if she wanted to take a look, she just had to go there. The other girl said that everything there was too expensive and that she could not afford it. Only Sister Hu was worthy of those items, and they did not even dare to buy luxury items in a boutique because they could only buy things through agents. The protagonist looked at his bag and thought that it was indeed very expensive. The system appeared again, completely impressed, because the user had spent 3 years' salary all at once and completed the achievement of spending his first large sum. Although it had been very flashy, it was still satisfying, and the reward for that was 660,000 since he was incredible. Xingwang realized that the more he spent, the more money he could earn, and now he was a little closer to becoming a millionaire, so he needed to work a little harder. That night, at the exotic Western restaurant, Xingwang appeared glamorous and dazzling. An attendant came up to him, saying that she would take him to his reserved private room. Xingwang smiled, saying that apparently he had arrived very early. The woman explained that the VIP room was a separate area where he could rest, enjoy some desserts, and wait for his friends. Xingwang thought that it was very obvious, because clothes made the man. In the past, he had never enjoyed such treatment in that kind of place. A short while later, the woman said that the separate area was right there, and that the desserts and teas were on the table so he could help himself as much as he wanted. Besides, if he needed anything, he just had to ring the bell and someone would come to serve him. She began to leave, saying that she would not disturb his rest so he could fully enjoy his meal. Xingwang went to the window and thought that seeing the Pearl of Song City from the 40th floor was a view he had never had before. As long as a person had money, they could enjoy the best services in life. With enough money, he could reach heights others could not. Those fantasies he had held in his mind for so long had now finally become reality. But first, he needed to send some money to his father. However, he did not want to shock him too much, so he would transfer only 100,000. Maybe he just needed to say that he had worked part-time, and he and his mother should not be confused or surprised by it. Meanwhile, Gao Wen was still in her live stream saying that if everyone thought her dancing was good, then they could send her a few more rockets. Besides, everyone was missing her #1 fan because he used to send several rockets, and it was time for him to show his dominance. Meanwhile, the protagonist was sitting in the VIP area waiting, thinking that he had sent the location and the name of the restaurant to her. But since she had not replied yet, she was probably doing a live stream. Gao Wen thanked her #1 fan for the rockets and said that this was the end of today's broadcast. As soon as the broadcast ended, she sat down in the chair exhausted, and her friends asked what she was going to eat that night. Gao Wen explained that she already had plans for that night. Jinuo asked if something was going on and who her sugar daddy was. But Gao Wen told Jinuo to stop talking nonsense because they knew the person she was going to meet since his name was Xing Wang. The other girl pointed out that apparently Gao Wen still had not forgotten that boy, because even after he had left that job, she continued talking about him the same way she had before. Shinuo questioned whether something was happening between the two of them. Gao Wen told them not to imagine things, because the protagonist had helped her a lot when he was her operations manager. Besides, he had resigned, so it was only fair for them to have a meal together because he had been very considerate toward her. The blonde girl said that she would like to go along as well. Gao Wen said that was fine and that she could come. Besides, she emphasized that they should eat something normal. But if the protagonist was very considerate, and it ended up being something expensive, they themselves needed to pay, because they could think of it as a group dinner. That was fine because she was very tired after a long day of work and this was a reward for herself. She asked if Sunuo was also coming along. Zinuo said yes because they should not take advantage of other people, but the truth was that she was thinking that with Xingwang's poor appearance, he ate Jianbing without adding eggs. So what expensive restaurant could he possibly afford? Gao Wen said that first, she needed to remove her makeup and she would meet them later in the parking lot. A short while later, the three of them went to the parking lot. She picked up her key and said that they were lucky because cars were not restricted today, so they could use her car. The blonde girl pointed out that it was becoming harder and harder to get good contracts recently. Because of that, she did not know when she would be able to buy a car like hers. Gao Wen asked why she did not try becoming a dance streamer, but the girl said that it was too tiring and that she did not want to waste her breath dancing from morning until night, because if she could find a soft-hearted fan to take her abroad, everything would be fine. Her name was Zhan Qingting. Shinwo thought that she was overthinking it because, in their line of work, it was already good enough not to be used and sleep with sponsors for free, and yet she was still talking about being taken abroad. Qingting asked if people were not allowed to dream about that. Jinuo said that it was fine and that she could keep dreaming as much as she wanted. But Jinuo thought that Gao Wen had not managed to buy a luxury car just through dancing, because no one knew how many fans she had really slept with. Otherwise, with her appearance, how could she be the company's top one? She asked where they were going to eat. Gao Wen asked her to wait a moment because she was going to check the location the protagonist had sent, but as soon as she looked, she was surprised. And Shinuo thought that maybe it was so cheap that she could not even bring herself to say it. Gao Wen said that it was Ling Wei. Qingting asked if it was some other restaurant with the same name, but Gao Wen explained that it was the one in the Qingtian building. It was that super famous restaurant with 3 Michelin stars. That place cost at least 3,000 per person and was very difficult to reserve. Qingting was surprised and questioned whether she was sure and had not made a mistake, because if that was right, it meant the protagonist had become successful and rich, and that was why he had resigned. Shinwo pointed out that maybe it was just in the same building and that it was indeed in the Qingtian building. Some people liked looking for nearby places to show off and confuse others, but Gao Wen told her not to judge people so quickly, because he was not that kind of vain person who liked to show off without having anything. Jinuo said that she agreed and that Xingwang was indeed not like that. But what she was really thinking was whether he could afford it or whether he would end up being slapped in the face. The three of them got into the car, saying that first, they needed to go there and see where it really was. Qingting praised the car, saying that the Audi was very stable and had good shock absorption, because her Mini Cooper shook a lot. Jinu said that Qingting had some very rich donors in her stream, so even if she was just a pretty blogger, maybe she could get some of those resources. After all, she only needed to do a few things, like pull her shirt down a little and make her voice a little softer. She continued saying that it did not matter whether Qingting was beautiful or a dance blogger. As long as she lowered her standards a little, those rich donors would send her a bunch of rockets, and then she could worry less about ads. Jingxing asked her to stop it because her audience was mostly female. Sinuo changed the subject, asking who would really want to show themselves off like that if they could earn clean money. If a rich guy really wanted to marry her, she would become a housewife immediately without thinking twice. She noticed that Gao Wen was silent and asked why she was not saying anything, questioning whether it was because she considered that attitude beneath her. Gao Wen explained that she thought being with someone because of excitement was dangerous, because if she could not be financially independent, she would become hostage to that person and would have no way to speak, complain, or demand anything. And in the end, just as his money was able to win her over, it would also be able to win over other people. As long as they had money, men could be surrounded by young women, and she did not want to stay alert all the time to see whether she was being cheated on. Zinuo said that Gao Wen was just being a killjoy and questioned whether she really thought that way. She thought that this girl needed to stop acting superior because her dances during live streams were more provocative than anyone else's. Gao Wen emphasized that she really only wanted to be self-sufficient and live her own way because she wanted to earn as much money as she could while she still could, since love had never paid the bills and money had never betrayed anyone. A short while later, they arrived at the parking lot. Qingqing said that even if Gao Wen made a good profit from her live streams, she still would not be able to pay for 3 people, and maybe the protagonist had sent the wrong address. Jinuo agreed, saying that Gao Wen should confirm it, because it would be embarrassing to enter an expensive restaurant and then leave because they did not have a reservation. And because of that, they might end up losing some followers if someone recognized them and filmed that embarrassment. Gao Wen said it was fine and decided to call him. Xingwang took a while to answer, and Xinuo asked if he still had not replied, thinking that it was all Gao Wen's fault for being close to someone who liked to show off. Gao Wen said that maybe the protagonist was a little busy. Xinuo laughed and said that it was true, maybe he was busy and had not been able to answer his phone, and that he would not ignore them just to mess with them so they could go there first. But she was thinking that since they were already there, she wanted to see the top one being made a fool of. Gao Wen entered the elevator and said that they were right and needed to go up. She thought that the place was very expensive and that, although she could not afford the things there, she also wanted to know Xingwang's salary level, because he was usually very frugal. That would be a very big expense for him, which made her wonder whether he was playing with her or not, because if that was the case, then she would have to deal with all of it. As soon as the elevator reached the floor, she became a little hesitant to step out and looked at her phone, trying to call the protagonist again. Suddenly, the receptionist went up to them and asked if they had a reservation. Gao Wen was a little hesitant to answer, but Jinuo said yes. Gao Wen, seeing that there was no way back now, said that the reservation was probably under Xingwang's name. Jinuo thought that the protagonist only had an operator position at the company and only received a salary of 5,000. A meal there should cost at least around 3 times Xingwang's salary, and now she wanted to see how the number one would handle that situation. The receptionist smiled and asked the 3 of them to follow her, because Mr. Xingwang had been waiting for them for quite some time. Xinuo was impressed and questioned whether that was really serious. As the 3 of them walked through the place, Zinuo only looked around with envy, thinking that Gao Wen really was very lucky because the company gave her resources, and she firmly occupied the number 1 position, leaving Zinuo in second place. Besides, she had all kinds of losers trying to win her attention, but now the protagonist was probably aiming too high, and he might end up losing both his money and the girl since she probably did not like someone who merely pretended to be rich. The receptionist took the 3 of them into an elevator and asked them to enter. She pressed the 40th floor, and Qingting emphasized that she was now really worried it might be someone with the same name, because they should ask to make sure, since it would be very embarrassing if they had misunderstood something. Gao Wen questioned what she was talking about. Qingting explained that this elevator was exclusive for VIP customers to access the rooms with the best view, and the minimum spending requirement should be at least 10,000. Zinuo thought that it was probably someone with the same name because that would be more than 3 months' salary, and if the protagonist gritted his teeth and did not drink anything, then maybe he had saved it all up. But even if it was indeed him, the 3 of them were there together, and the expense would be enormous for 4 people, so he probably would not be able to handle it. Besides, maybe he was very clever and had seen that someone with the same name had made a reservation, and now he was just trying to put on a show. The more he boasted, the more likely he was to end up being exposed. The receptionist opened the door and politely asked the 3 of them to enter and sit down. But as soon as they entered, they realized that the protagonist was not there. Qingting seized the opportunity and said that they were in an excellent place, so they should take the chance to snap some photos. She asked if they really were not going to take advantage of this opportunity, because they had said they could not take photos at reception, only in the private rooms. And regardless of whether they ended up eating or not, if she took some photos, then she would consider that she had done the right thing, because she could post them on social media and no one would know whether she had gone in just to take a look or had really gone there to eat. Zinuo sat there a little irritated, saying that they could take their own photos by themselves, while thinking that the protagonist had invited them and was not there. But that was to be expected. Qingting continued being impressed by everything, because she had never dined in such an expensive restaurant in her life. So who knew when she would have the chance to come back there again? Zinuo remained in a bad mood and asked her friend if anyone had replied, because she did not want to be made a fool of if this was just a misunderstanding. The receptionist went to the waiting room and knocked on the door, asking if the protagonist was awake, because the guests had just arrived. Gao Wen, also a little suspicious of everything, said that maybe they really had mistaken him for someone else. Xingwang was just an ordinary office worker and had no way of having the money to dine in that place. Shinuo thought that she had known all of that already. But suddenly, the protagonist opened the door and apologized, saying that he had fallen asleep. He emphasized that he had woken up on the fourth missed call and that the girls had waited for a long time. He asked the waitress to start serving the dishes. Gao Wen looked at him and immediately got ready not to lose. Qing Ting was also impressed, asking if he really was the same protagonist because he was wearing a bunch of designer clothes. That jacket alone cost more than 40,000, and she had seen Liang wearing one. Jinwoo thought that this was indeed the entire recent collection Louis Vuitton had produced, and maybe the protagonist was a hidden second-generation rich kid. This made her even more envious of Gao Wen, questioning when she had become so lucky because she had silently hooked a second-generation rich kid. Gao Wen told Xingwang not to worry because they had also just arrived. The protagonist looked at Qing Ting and was happy to see that she was there too, remembering her name. But he could not remember Zinuo's. She introduced herself, saying that her name was Chu Shinuo. The protagonist apologized, saying that he had just woken up and was a little confused, and besides, she looked a little different without the beauty filter. Zinuo smiled and said it was fine because her makeup was very light today, but in truth, she became a little irritated by that situation. Gao Wen explained that she was leaving work and had run into her two colleagues who also wanted to come there. She emphasized that she had thought the protagonist might mind it, so they could. But before she could finish speaking, the waiters arrived bringing all the dishes, saying that they should enjoy their meal. As soon as the drinks and food were served, Gao Wen became worried because the price of this was very high and they would not even be able to split the bill. So what was the protagonist doing? There was no reason for him to do all of this. Qing Ting was impressed, saying that there was a second-generation rich kid among them, and he had probably resigned from work to return to his family's company. Gao Wen said that she also did not know exactly what was going on there. Xingwang was a little confused by that situation, thinking how anyone would want to eat that because those were just leftovers, even if they looked pretty. Qing Ting asked if he minded if she took a few photos first. Xingwang said no, and that she could feel free to do whatever she wanted inside. While she took some photos, Zinuo asked her friend what was really going on, questioning whether she was thinking of keeping them in the dark. Gao Wen apologized but said that she also did not know exactly what was going on there. She explained that the two of them were not very close, and that, aside from work relations, they had not had much personal contact. The few marketing campaigns he had arranged for her had been very effective, and she was very grateful for that. She thought that maybe the protagonist was a low-profile and pragmatic heir, and that, this time, he probably did not want a girl to pay for the food and decided to reveal his wealth. He asked the waitress if there was nothing more down to earth. Qing Ting thanked the protagonist, saying that he really was very bold because the last time someone paid for a meal for her that cost more than 10,000 per person, she still had not been satisfied since she had only accepted because the photos would make her look like a socialite on social media. The waitress asked the protagonist what he thought of ribs with black truffles covered in salmon roe sauce. She continued explaining the other dishes, and finally she said that they also had Alaskan king crab, and the largest one they had was around 20 kilos. But if the protagonist wanted, she could ask the chef to customize it for them. The protagonist was a little disappointed, saying that just hearing the names already killed his appetite because it was too boring and he wanted something a little more intense, not anything slow-cooked. For that reason, he wanted her to bring more crabs, imported steaks, and sliced lamb. Qing Ting screamed in amazement, saying that this was the first time she had ever seen someone order like that in a high-class restaurant, and that it was truly enlightening. Shinua pointed out that if he wanted to eat that, then there was no need to go to a French restaurant. This made her wonder whether the protagonist was really an heir, because he looked more like a nouveau riche, or maybe even an imposter. The protagonist continued with his somewhat unusual requests, asking if they had grilled kidneys and barbecue skewers because he really wanted to eat them. The waitress was a little startled and said that, unfortunately, they could only prepare the items on the menu and did not have those items, apologizing for it. Xing asked if she could call the manager because he wanted to discuss it a little since he was not satisfied with today's menu. The waitress said that was fine and asked him to wait just a moment, but she was surprised, wondering whether that gentleman was really serious. A short while later, the manager came in and greeted everyone, saying that he was the manager of that establishment. He emphasized that he was deeply sorry, but they were a French restaurant, so they only served French cuisine. Zinuo thought that the protagonist was a complete idiot because this was a French restaurant and it was obvious that the request would be refused. However, he thought that wanting barbecue in a French restaurant was very simple. Xing shouted, saying that he would pay 300,000 for the meal from now on, but he wanted the grilled kidneys and barbecue skewers, and if the manager could get them, he would give him another 50,000 tip. Upon hearing 300,000, the manager was impressed, and so were the three girls. Without thinking twice, the manager agreed to the request and asked what doneness he preferred for the meat. Xing said that he would reward him with the largest beef sashimi to celebrate his change in attitude, though he still preferred his defiant look from before. The manager felt confident and asked the protagonist to sit down because he would instruct the kitchen immediately. The system appeared, saying that the host was in a high-end French restaurant and had acted tough, disrespecting table etiquette and making the restaurant change its own rules and give up on cuisine. The reward for that was 500,000, and the system emphasized that it hoped the host would keep trying and wished him good luck. Xing thought that this system really was exceptional. He smiled and told all the girls at the table that dinner should be about relaxing and eating whatever they wanted, asking if they did not agree. Ting raised her hand and shouted that she agreed, thinking that taking photos of skewers in a high-class French restaurant might be even more interesting for her social media. A short while later, the new food the protagonist had ordered was served at the table. Ting was impressed, seeing that money really did speak, and that, with money, people could do whatever they wanted. She picked up her phone to take pictures because no one would believe that she had eaten barbecue in a 3-Michelin-star French restaurant on the top floor of Qingtian Tower, the tallest building in Beijing. As soon as all the food was served, the protagonist asked if all the ladies present would like to join him for dinner. After eating, Xing wiped his mouth and excused himself, saying that he needed to go to the bathroom. After he left the table, Ting pointed out that the clothes the protagonist was wearing must cost around 150,000, and together with the dinner expenses, he was definitely a second-generation heir. And for someone like him, working at that company meant only one thing. She said that maybe Xing liked Gao Wen and had stayed there just to get a little closer to her. Gao Wen became embarrassed and said that she did not have that much charm, and maybe he simply had not wanted to expose himself too much while working. But now that he was about to leave, he simply did not care anymore. Ting agreed, saying that some second-generation heirs just liked experiencing a little of ordinary life. Xinuo asked if Gao Wen really was not touched at all and whether she did not like the protagonist. Ting said that an extremely rich and generous guy spending a fortune on dinner with her was quite romantic, if they thought about it. Xinuo pointed out that Gao Wen seemed surprisingly calm and asked whether she had already known about the protagonist's wealth, because it was not fair to keep that news from all of them. And now it made perfect sense that she had said she was not interested in that big donor because she had already set her eyes on a much bigger fish. So she had made fools of her sisters all that time. Gao Wen continued eating while explaining that she really had not known because they were not close, so how could she have feelings for him? But her legs were already trembling as she continued saying that honestly she had not had any private interactions with the protagonist and had no idea how rich he was until tonight, since he had always been very ethical at the company and had always been modest. He was ambitious, worked hard, and often stayed late doing overtime. He seemed like any other dedicated and ordinary employee. Sinuo said that was fine and that she would reluctantly accept that explanation. However, she asked whether it was possible that the protagonist was only pretending because, nowadays, many people pretended to be rich to impress girls. They treated them to expensive dinners, luxury cars, and designer clothes. And some even maxed out their credit cards to keep up the act. After all, they themselves had heard many stories of some big donors doing the same thing, and it was possible that the protagonist might be that kind of person. Ting said that, now that she had mentioned it, she was starting to wonder whether the protagonist had actually been pretending to be poor all this time, because if that was the case, then they should applaud his acting skills. Sinuo explained that it would be very difficult to verify whether he came from a rich family, so there were other ways to confirm it and asked whether they should investigate a little further. Gao Wen questioned whether that was really necessary because it seemed a little too intrusive. After all, he was already paying for that expensive dinner for all of them, and doubting whether he was a fraud or not did not seem right. Zinuo thought that Gao Wen was just pretending to be innocent. She told her friend not to underestimate her own value because she was a popular streamer, and he had a lot to gain by getting close to her. So spending a few $100,000 to win her devotion might be worth it for some people. That was exactly how manipulative people operated. They attracted their prey and made them feel special until they were emotionally involved. When that happened, only then would they reveal their true faces. And if that was the case, the protagonist was a dangerous person. Gao Wen emphasized that she had no intention of developing feelings for Xingwang because of this. Zinuo explained that they did not need to continue that conversation because Gao Wen just needed to do exactly what she told her to do when they were about to verify the protagonist's true status, since they were all friends there and cared about each other. A short while later, they went to the parking lot and Gao Wen looked at the protagonist, thinking that if he really was pretending, she needed to cover today's expenses, even though she hoped that was not the case. After all, there was nothing wrong with living a simple and honest life. Qingting said that she was very curious and asked whether Xingwang was dating anyone. He said that unfortunately he was not because he had been single since birth, a genuine lone wolf in the romance department. Qingting was surprised and asked if he was serious. The protagonist explained that he had been so focused on his career that he had not even had time to think about it. He thought that being an office worker was quite exhausting, but at least it came with a good salary. Becoming a love-struck fool after work did not seem like a very good thing because that would be too miserable, and he certainly was not foolish enough to put himself in such a position. Zinuo said that it was still 9 o'clock at night and asked what they thought about continuing this at a bar. Although she was not as rich as the protagonist, they could still pay for a few drinks. She suggested going to a bar called Bar Fuge because she was a regular customer there and the atmosphere was very good. Besides, she knew that many internet celebrities went there too, and maybe they might even meet someone and get some business contacts. Xingwang ended up agreeing, and with that, all of them got into the car with him. While he was in the car, the protagonist thought that he now had some capital to invest, so maybe he would open his own media company in the future. And given his successful track record in the field, it certainly would not hurt to get to know a few celebrities. Before they went inside, Zinuo emphasized that the drinks there were a little expensive, so she could only cover 1 or 2 drinks for each person. Besides, she would feel a little pressured if they drank too much, because she was not such an adventurous person. She asked if there was any problem, but Qingting said no, because she would drink whatever came along. Gao Wen told Xingwang to drink only a little and have fun to distract himself, and he agreed. Xingwang looked around and thought that he had never imagined he would have the privilege of visiting the famous Bar Fuge. Just thinking about it already made him very excited about the whole situation. As soon as they entered, the music was very loud and people were dancing and enjoying the atmosphere. The 4 of them went to a table and Zinuo said she would have a margarita and asked what the others wanted to order. Qingting said that, for her, a pink lady would be fine. Gao Wen said she would like a non-alcoholic absolute lime because she still needed to drive. Zinuo asked what the protagonist wanted, but noticed that he was a little lost and thought that he was probably pretending to be a second-generation heir because he looked like someone who had never been to a bar of that level before. Xingwang realized that she was talking to him and asked what she had just said. Zinuo asked what he wanted to order, and the protagonist said that it was fine. Anything would do. Zinuo told the waiter that Xingwang would have a Long Island iced tea. But Qingting leaned closer and asked why she was ordering such a strong drink for him, questioning whether she was trying to make him reveal his true identity while drunk, and told her not to go too far. Zinuo emphasized that, in the end, a bar was meant for getting drunk, so there was no problem. The night continued, and Zinuo said that there was a bartender named Danny at Bar Fuyu who made incredible drinks. However, it was a little expensive, but she really wanted to try it. Gao Wen became worried, saying that her friend should know when to stop. Zinuo emphasized that the protagonist was pretending to be rich, so why could they not teach him a lesson? That way, they would make sure he did not try to do something of that nature again. She called Xingwang, but he was observing the people around him, thinking that he had seen some influencers who might have potential to become business partners, so he needed to make more money. But Zinuo became a little irritated, thinking that he was just pretending not to hear her. Suddenly, the protagonist looked at her and asked if she had said something. Zinuo emphasized that he seemed a little bored and asked if he would like to play dice. The protagonist asked how to play it. She placed the dice on the table and said that she would liven things up a little. She explained that if he happened to lose, he had to remove a piece of clothing, and if he did not want to, then he would have to pay 10,000, asking if he wanted to play. Xingwang took a deep breath and stood up, asking her not to forget that he used to be the company's operations manager, so he knew all her information and was also familiar with her skills. He asked if she really thought he would not know that she was an expert at dice games, and that no one in the company had ever managed to beat her. This made him think that she was trying to make him spend money. She tried to explain herself, but the protagonist continued saying that he already knew very well what she was thinking. Since he was just a mere operations guy earning only $5,000 a month with no future prospects, looking poor and inexperienced, but now wearing designer clothes, only famous brands, and taking all of them to eat at a high-class restaurant, it meant that she was thinking he was only pretending to be rich. He emphasized that he had been planning to let it go, since he did not want to see her idiotic face. However, she was seeing him as an easy target. But he was not stupid, so she should not think that he could not see the real looks of disdain and contempt she had been giving him since they met. The system appeared, saying that the host refused to get involved in internal conflict and would not be made a fool of, boldly responding to other people's schemes and avoiding falling into traps. Because of that, the reward was 1 million. Thanks to this, the host had entered another stage of life, embarking on a carefree journey. The system congratulated him for surpassing the 1 million mark with a current balance of 1,890,000. Xinguang emphasized that he indeed did not come from a rich family. Xinuo pointed her finger at him, saying that she had been right from the beginning because the protagonist was only pretending to be rich when, in truth, he was not. Xinguang told her not to be in such a hurry because he had not finished speaking. He moved even closer to her, saying that although he did not come from a rich family, he still had a lot of money, and for that reason, he would like to offer 300,000 for all her clothes. Then she could leave that place with 300,000, but completely naked, asking if she was interested. Xinhua became embarrassed and shouted that he was outrageous. Gao Wen stepped into the middle of the argument and said that she had only been joking, so he did not need to get angry. She asked him to sit beside her and enjoy himself a little. Xinhua continued with all her arrogance, saying that no one would believe he had all that money to offer her 300,000. But to show his true power, Xinguang shouted in front of everyone, saying that today he was willing to spend 300,000 to serve drinks to everyone, so no one would leave that place until they were completely drunk. Besides, he wanted to pay in advance and by debit immediately. One of the waiters went up to him, swiped the card, and said that the payment of 300,000 had indeed been completed. Everyone in that nightclub was impressed and thanked him, saying that he truly liked spending a lot of money because they had never imagined they would be treated that way by a complete stranger. The system said that the host had bought drinks for everyone and had been very generous and extravagant, so he had earned a reward of 666,666. Xinhuo was shocked, thinking that he really did have all that money. Xinguang walked past her and said that he already knew she usually looked down on poor guys like him, who did not make much money, but that did not mean he intended to let her disrespect him in front of everyone. After all, people like her were just ants to him. Those who only liked looking at other people's wallets were also the easiest to humiliate with money. They sat at the table, and the atmosphere between them became a little tense. Jingting looks at her friend and tries to say something, but suddenly Zinuo stands up, saying she just remembered she has something to do and is already leaving. Then she starts running off angrily. The protagonist simply shakes the dice left on the table, deep in thought, but tells everyone to keep having fun since everything is paid for that night. A girl then approaches, recognizing Gao Wen, and asks if she performed badly that day and came there to complain. She moves closer, saying that Gao Wen's #1 fan didn't give her anything that day and asks if he will stop watching her live streams in the future. But Gao Wen just says she is not working right now and therefore does not want to talk about work at that moment. However, the annoying girl insists, saying she's only pretending to be innocent, that she's actually no longer popular and still acting like a saint. She tries to touch Gao Wen, but Gao Wen says that her business is none of her concern. The girl, who was holding a glass of alcohol, asked what was going on and told her not to be so distant. Gao Wen asked why the girl was sitting there. The young woman emphasized that they could not miss a good opportunity to do their live streams, because since they were internet celebrities, they should have good sense for good opportunities. She opened the live stream saying that she had just met Gao Wen at a bar and that this was a rare opportunity since they wanted to see her. But apparently she did not really want to participate in the live stream and asked whether they could convince her to agree. The viewers began sending messages to Gao Wen asking her to hurry up and do it, because this was an event they had all been waiting for. The young woman thought that the big shots from her company were ready to support her in surpassing Gao Wen and becoming the #1 dance streamer. And with an opportunity like this, they definitely would not let it go. Now it was only a matter of time before they made their moves. Gao Wen's phone rang and she said that she needed to answer it. As soon as she answered, the people from her company said that she needed to start the live stream immediately and not miss a good opportunity like this. However, she said that she was not in good condition to do that tonight, but the people from the company said that they had already paid for her to be at the top of the news and that she had to do that live stream even if she was not feeling well. If she did not start right now, she would be punished. The other young woman said that apparently she wanted to hide and not go live. Then Gao Wen decides to start the stream, and soon the two go to the dance floor. They begin dancing, and Qing King, watching, says that people are sending many rockets to both of them, but the other girl is leaving Gao Wen behind. Taking advantage of the situation, the girl starts speeding up even more, driving the fans crazy. While Gao Wen receives comments saying she is performing very poorly and comparing the two, showing that Gao Wen is far below, more people start joining the stream and commenting, asking why Wen, who is one of the top streamers, is being crushed in the votes like that and questioning why she is being humiliated by someone else in that way. The protagonist saw all of this and thought that she was playing dirty. The live stream battle between the two of them began, and Gao Wen said that without Brother Z, she did not even have a single rocket, and asked her followers to send her a few rockets. Suddenly, someone sent a rocket and she thanked them. Then, several more appeared on the screen, and she continued thanking them for the donation. The people in the live stream said that the votes had started changing drastically and questioned whether there might have been a bug in the system, because a big donor had appeared out of nowhere and started sending a ton of rockets per minute. The young woman who had challenged her thought that this girl had some secret donor. However, she thought that the money was just being thrown away and asked why he was spending more than that. Suddenly, another donation appeared, and Gao Wen thanked the big brother for the rocket, but thought that it was way too exaggerated. The other people also questioned who exactly this big brother was because they had never seen him donate before, and in such a short time, he had already donated more than 1 million. Some people thought that maybe it was even an agency forcefully promoting someone. However, other people said that the platform took around 60 to 70% of the donations and questioned whether an agency would throw away that much money just to promote someone. Xingwang asked if there was really any reason for them to keep doing this, because the victory had already been decided. The system appeared to him, saying that he had been extravagant as well as understanding. The host had spent money like water, showing extravagance that reached the heavens, sparing no expense and even becoming a little pretentious. For that reason, the system would not fall behind, extravagantly rewarding him with 5 million. Qingting said that this could not really be happening because even Gao Wen had already stopped, and yet this big shot was still donating, making her wonder whether some child had taken the phone of their rich parents and clicked accidentally. But Xingwang continued acting secretly, and people began entering the live stream saying that they had come to see all the donations and were there for the millionaire. Gao Wen was so surprised and shocked by that situation that she asked everyone to wait a little so she could breathe. Meanwhile, the protagonist continued donating several rockets. This went so far that it became breaking news. The news said that a mysterious donor had appeared in a small live stream battle on Xuanwen, and more than 2,000 rockets had been donated. Someone went to the group of big shots on Shu Yi's side and asked if anyone was simply going to let this pass. They emphasized that they needed to send more gifts to Shu Yi since there was only one millionaire on the other side, so everyone just needed to do what he was doing. Suddenly, all of them started donating, and Shu Yi thought that they had finally arrived. She smiled and thanked them for the rockets they were donating. She thought that her top fan wanted her to send private videos to him, because he was very rich and generous, so he definitely would not miss this chance to become a hero. Boss Kong and Boss Ri were there, so defeating those random people on the other side would be easy. But Xingwang liked a good fight and asked if they were really going to play like that. Then he needed to strike back and began donating several rockets, reaching 100 in a row. The system appeared again, saying that the host was incredible, so it wished him a long life and congratulated him for defeating the opponent's top fans and becoming the new biggest donor with a reward of 10 million. After receiving his reward, he donated another 500 rockets, causing Gao Wen's advantage to skyrocket all at once, and earning another 10 million as a reward, making Gao Wen the winner of the battle. But before it ended, he sent another 1,000 rockets, leaving her speechless. The system said that the more rockets, the more money, and congratulated him again for becoming the #1 donor of the day on the platform, with a reward of 10 million. The system was moved by the host's persistence in pressing buttons, so the reward was another 1 million. Gao Wen bowed and thanked the mysterious donor for all the support, because he had helped her win that match and had also brought her a lot of attention, since this was the first time a small streamer had reached so many millions of viewers. However, she would like to say that everyone worked very hard for their own money, so she did not want anyone to waste that much money on her. The viewers were impressed seeing that she was very pure and unpretentious, and that was very rare nowadays. Shui was completely irritated, questioning how that had happened. because all her effort had been for nothing, and in the end, it had only helped Gao Wen become even more famous. Tens of millions in donations, millions of viewers online. This was an absurd achievement that not even the best streamers on the platform could reach. Xingwang stood up and said that it was getting very late, so maybe it was time to go back to his bed. But before leaving, he called Shu Yi, telling her not to feel discouraged, because he thought she had done very well and also had several donors willing to support her. So she needed to keep working hard, and maybe one day, she would be able to surpass Gao Wen. Ching Ching laughed and said that the protagonist's words had probably made her even more curious, but Gao Wen only told her not to tease. Shu Yi was truly irritated by all of that, and Xingwang left with the two girls. On the way out, Ching Ting asked if they had seen Shu Yi's face at the end, because that girl had turned white as a sheep, and she bet Shu Yi was freaking out now, since her plan had been completely annihilated. Because of that, that night had truly been enlightening, because she had managed to see the big donor, the #1 magnate of the platform. But she noticed that Gao Wen did not seem that excited. Gao Wen said that the truth was that she did not feel worthy of all of this, because she had never seen this fan in her entire life, and he had simply appeared out of nowhere and started donating money, so the situation had become a little uncomfortable. Cheng Ting said that it did not matter because he was a messenger from God, so she needed to get closer to that generous donor. She said she would send a message to that donor, and as soon as she sent it, Xingwang's phone rang, saying that he had a new message. The two of them were surprised and looked at him. Ching Ting questioned whether that was not the official notification from the Zhuanyin platform because she had just sent a message to the mysterious donor and the protagonist had received it. Gao Wen also looked at him, a little suspicious, but the protagonist laughed, trying to disguise it, asking why the two of them were looking at him that way, because it was just a coincidence. He explained that he had just left his job, so he was receiving a lot of messages there because of his old work, and they had misunderstood everything. Gao Wen emphasized that just a short while ago, the protagonist had spent millions, and the other side had at least a few billionaires in assets. He agreed, saying that he only had a little money, but millions in a few minutes was a bit too much for him. But Ching Ting remained suspicious, because she had thought that this donor Wang had a Wang in his name, so it could very well be him. Gao Wen asked where the protagonist lived because she would like to drop him off at his house. The protagonist said there was no need, because he lived near Longhu New City, and it was completely out of her way, so he would take a taxi. Suddenly, someone arrived calling her by name. It was the protagonist's former boss. He said that he had imagined the background of that live stream looked a lot like the bar he was in, and that was good because he had wanted to take a look outside and found her. But Gao Wen did not feel very comfortable with that situation. He went up to the protagonist saying that this apparently was a former employee and questioned how an unemployed person dared to go there, asking if Gao Wen had invited that skillless guy who needed women to do things for him. But Gao Wen emphasized that this was not quite the situation, because the truth was that she was depending on the protagonist that night. He had paid for both the dinner and the drinks. The former boss was a little surprised, but said that she could not be serious, questioning whether she had fallen in love with that poor guy and was covering for him, because he already knew everything. Tonight the bill had been paid by a mysterious person, so how had the protagonist paid for those drinks? He emphasized that he had already understood what was happening there because poor guys did not have money, so they became very good at talking their way into finding girls with money. Ching Ting told manager He Shui that Xingwang had really paid for everyone's drinks, but the manager became irritated, asking who gave her the right to speak and questioning whether she thought she was something just because she had a few fans. He emphasized that he had wanted to tell her something for a while because all those fans were fake. She was surprised and asked what he was talking about. The manager continued mocking her, asking if she really had not expected that because the company had spent a lot of money promoting her, buying several fake followers. After all, she only put on her makeup every day and barely landed any ads for exposure, so who would want to watch her? He emphasized that she was lost money for the company and should learn from Gao Wen, who had danced for one night and brought millions to the company. Ching Ting was shocked by all of this, and the manager continued saying that next time she needed to wear a little less clothing and put on less makeup because no one believed that she was really pure. He looked at Gao Wen, asking if she had not said that she no longer wanted to be a dance streamer. He said that she had earned a lot of money for the company today and had done an excellent job, so if she agreed to one more thing, he could tell the boss to transfer her to television roles. For example, if she spent one night with him. But the protagonist grabbed his arm and asked him to show a little respect. He, Shui, became irritated, saying that the protagonist was just a failure trying to play the hero. He questioned whether he could really give her resources with the money from his counterfeit clothes. But Xingwang started getting angry and told him to leave immediately. Gao Wen was impressed by the real man standing in front of her to defend her honor. Because of that, she also gathered her courage and told the manager that if he dared to try doing that to her again, she would terminate her contract with the company immediately. But the manager continued laughing, asking how she would do that because she had signed a 5-year contract with the company and still had more than a year remaining. If she terminated the contract now, she would have to pay a penalty of 10 million. Could she afford that? Gao Wen emphasized that she had earned millions for that company in just that night, and with her savings, she believed she could afford it just fine. But He Shui continued mistreating her, saying that influencers who danced around wearing those kinds of clothes just like her were nothing more than prostitutes with price tags, because in ancient times, they would have lived inside a brothel. He kept moving closer to her, saying that he would be very honest, because even if she could pay the penalty, the company would never let her leave, since no one would stop milking a cash cow like her. He emphasized that she would be blacklisted in that industry with just one word from the boss. Xingwang stepped in front of her again, saying that if she really could not leave the company, then that was fine because he could simply buy Meow Meow Media and then the person leaving would not be Gao Wen, but the idiot who thought he was a demigod. The manager said that this was impressive and patted the protagonist on the shoulder, saying that he would be waiting for a poor bastard like him to buy the company. He spat on the ground, saying that he was already irritated by that situation because no one had the right to try showing off in front of him. As soon as he left, Qing Ting began trembling in a panic attack, asking if all her followers really were fake. Because if that was true, then all the big donors who donated money to her were just people hired by the company. Gao Wen tried to calm her friend, saying that this was not true because she had many people watching her makeup live streams. Besides, she also knew some big donors who truly liked her. He Shui only wanted to put her down, manipulate her, and make her think that she owed everything to the company, so she would always lower her head to him. Gao Wen told her friend to take a deep breath and not be upset by the words of that piece of trash. The protagonist only watched all of this as she thanked him for helping them that night. She also thanked Qing Ting for helping clarify things, even if they had irritated that idiot manager. Qing Ting said that it was fine because if it were not for all of that, she would never have discovered how much he looked down on her. Irritated, she shouted that he was a massive bastard. Gao Wen looked at the protagonist and said that they were only colleagues, so he did not need to do all of that for her. Xingwang smiled and said that it was fine, because he had also hated that idiot guy for some time and only needed a chance to tell him some truths. Gao Wen took a deep breath and extended her hand to the protagonist, saying that she did not know whether they would have the chance to meet again, but she hoped he would truly achieve great things in his life, telling him to take care of himself. The protagonist was surprised and took her hand, asking her to take care of herself too. After the farewell, the two girls got into the car and left. As soon as she left, the protagonist picked up his phone, thinking that he had been so focused on sending rockets that he had not even noticed the notification sounds. When he saw his bank balance, he realized that he was now a millionaire. He emphasized that he needed to hurry and buy a plane ticket to go back home. As soon as he bought the plane ticket, he thought that it was very expensive, because the ticket he used to buy before, by train, was only 300. As soon as he bought the ticket without making a fuss for 4,000, he received another system notification saying that it was not just the most expensive one, and congratulating the host for enjoying first class for the first time without hesitation. Because of that, he received a reward of 10,000. The next day, in his dormitory, someone began knocking on the door saying that it was time for rent. He woke up irritated, thinking that it was always the same thing, because 1 week before the date, the person was already bothering him, and it was not even actually time to pay the rent yet. The person outside continued shouting for him to pay the rent already and not pretend that he was not home. He got up at 6 o'clock and said that he was coming, asking whether she could not let people sleep in peace. The woman said that young people nowadays were always procrastinating. Every time, she had to go there to remind them to pay the rent and questioned whether he was not capable of doing it himself. Xingwang used his phone to scan the QR code and said that 1 full year of rent had been paid. This left her surprised when she saw that he had just sent 10,000 as payment. She wondered how that broke boy had managed to pay an entire year of rent all at once, because he always paid 1 month's rent right on the deadline. She said that there was an extra 400 he had sent, but since he was still very sleepy, Xingwang told her she could keep it and consider it a service fee so he would not be disturbed while sleeping for the rest of the year, then closed the door in her face. He threw himself back onto the bed, thinking that the flight was at 10 o'clock and that he could sleep a little more than 3 hours. His roommate got up, asking if he had won the lottery, and thought that paying for 1 year of rent was already insane, but he had also thrown away half a month's rent. The system said that it was shocked because the host had surpassed himself by paying 1 year of rent and even tipping the landlady. His ability to show off had reached new heights, so the reward was a new house in Swan Bay in Sang City. Upon hearing that notification, he got up in shock and looked at his hands where there was indeed a key, wondering if this was possible and if he had really won a house. He quickly changed clothes and jumped out of bed, while his roommate asked where he was going in such a hurry. The protagonist ran out, shouting that he was going back to his house and heading straight to the airport, and that he would not be back for a while. His roommate asked if he was not going to pack his bags, but the protagonist said there was no need, because as soon as he got the money, he would pay for a VIP room at the hospital for his mother. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, his father was with his mother, saying that Xinguang had just called and said that he would come back today and asked the two of them not to worry. The protagonist's mother said that she did not really know what had gotten into her son, but he was very excited, said he had earned money from a part-time job and sent 100,000 to them, but she wanted to know what kind of part-time job paid that much, so she hoped he had not gotten involved in anything illegal just to pay for her treatment. But the protagonist's father questioned how she could imagine he would do that, because she knew exactly what kind of person their son was. Xinguang slammed open the room door, shouting for his mother, and asked his father how she was. Worried, he asked if she was feeling well and if she had any discomfort. His mother sat up in bed saying that she was fine because she was only a little sick and needed a minor surgery, but her vital signs were very good. Besides, she emphasized that his father had already told him that he did not need to leave the city just to visit them. After all, he was now covered in sweat. She asked his father to give Xinguang an apple so he could eat something. But before eating the apple, the protagonist said that he had resigned, leaving his father and mother surprised by it. But his mother said that he was an excellent son, and even if he had resigned, it was fine, because he would find something better. His father agreed, saying that he had gone through many things to be there, and resting at home for a while might do him good. Xinguang was happy, thinking that his parents were his safe harbor, so he understood all those emotions exactly. He asked his father if he had already paid the medical bills. The protagonist's father said that he had borrowed the money just yesterday after speaking with him, and asked his son not to worry and to stay there talking with his mother. Besides, he emphasized that he would return the 100,000 Xinguang had sent, because a young man like him needed money for many things and did not need to worry about his parents. Xinguang refused and told his father to keep that money because he had given it to his parents. Besides, he wanted to know who his father had borrowed the money from, because they would return it immediately. The protagonist's father said it was only from a few relatives, but Xinguang asked if it was from his uncle and aunt. He became irritated when he found out, saying that he would pay it immediately. His father tried to stop him, saying that they would find a way to pay them back soon, and he did not need to worry about it because he could not solve everything. He emphasized that the protagonist had worked hard to save that money and did not need to spend it that way. Suddenly, his mother began crying, saying that all of this was her fault for being sick and demanding too much from the two of them. She said that her son worked very hard in the city, so how could they let him pay for the medical expenses? She questioned whether he thought she did not know that he was giving all his money to them while living a difficult life and never complaining about anything. Since her son's salary was only 5,000 and big cities were very expensive, he needed to pay rent, socialize with colleagues, and money was needed everywhere. Xinguang asked her not to say that and said that things were not that difficult since she was only imagining it. In truth, it was not that bad and he could handle it. He emphasized that he had gotten plenty of part-time work while working and that she did not need to worry about money, asking where she thought he had gotten that 100,000 for her. He emphasized that he would tell the doctors that they wanted the most competent treatment for her and would no longer worry about costs at all. Besides, he would immediately go to his uncle's house to pay them back and not owe anyone anything. He got onto a cart saying that he was going to Hutong Street 32. As soon as the cart began moving, the protagonist started trembling on top of it, asking why that road was even worse than before. He asked the driver if they had not been talking about repairing those roads around 2 years ago, so why was it still so uneven? The driver said that they had already done the repairs, but everything was worse than before. The contractors were the officials. They had run off with half the money meant for the repairs, and the roads were left that way. This made the protagonist even more irritated, saying that all those guys were nothing but pigs. He thought that this was a poor region in the middle of nowhere, far from the capital, and things were already difficult enough there. If his family had not been financially stable and his parents had not paid for his education, he probably would have been trapped in that city forever. A short while later, he arrived at his aunt and uncle's house and became irritated because they were supposedly close relatives, but they lived in a house hundreds of square meters wide, made with reinforced concrete, while he and his family had only a few dozen meters of brick and concrete. And if they had not taken all the compensation money from his grandfather's relocation, how could there be such a huge difference between the families? and now his parents had to borrow 50,000 for medical expenses. Irritated by that situation, he knocked on the door and a girl answered, asking who it was. When she saw the protagonist, she asked what he was doing there. She was Wang Ju. Xing Wang was also surprised to see her and asked what she was doing at his uncle's house. Xing Wang continued asking what she was doing at his uncle's house. Wang Ju did not know how to answer. Suddenly, another young man arrived and said that if the protagonist's sister-in-law was not at his house, then where else would she be? Xing Wang finally understood what was going on and turned his face away, asking if his uncle was inside that house, because he had come to pay the debt. Wang Ju kept watching him and wondered why he was being so cold and whether he still liked her. The other young man touched her body a little more and asked why she was looking at the protagonist so much, because she was about to become his wife. Wang Ju explained that she was only looking at how pathetic he seemed, because it was fascinating. Looking at his clothes, there was not a single brand in sight, and he even said he lived in the big city, but apparently he was just a failure. Their countryside was much better, because her future husband could wear branded clothes whenever he wanted. The young man said that things had improved now. The protagonist entered the house and his uncle was playing cards. His uncle said that he was his nephew who worked in the city and was now a big city boy. The other said that a city boy probably earned a lot of money there. Another said that he had heard that a friend's daughter who worked in a city was earning 100,000 a month, and the protagonist had gone to university, so he must be doing well. The other young man arrived and began mocking the situation, saying that he really was doing very well, working like a dog just to earn only 5,000 a month, while his family had old women feeding pigs and earning 3,000. Besides, 5,000 was not enough to save anything in the end because he had heard that rent in the city was very expensive. And after rent, there was barely enough left to eat, and maybe that was not even true. The protagonist simply ignored everything, telling his uncle that he was there to pay the debt and would like to skip the small talk. The protagonist's uncle said that he was in no hurry because if his family was having difficulties, then he did not need to rush it since he would charge interest anyway. Xing Wang emphasized again to his uncle that he was doing very well, so he did not want to keep borrowing money. His uncle continued playing cards and said that the protagonist did not need to be polite because he worked hard in the city and was getting by on his own while taking care of his family. Xing Wang emphasized that he would pay the debt anyway. His uncle pointed to the debt book, saying that if he insisted so much, then he would not stop him because making money was always good. He asked Dakai to get the red book on top of the cabinet. Dakai handed over the book, saying that they were family and could not bear to see the protagonist under so much pressure because blood was thicker than water. His uncle praised the protagonist, saying that he was the university student of the family and was very proud, so he did not want to use the money and wanted everything as clear as crystal. And that was perfect. But they did not need to be so rigid when they were family. Xing Wang transferred 51,000, including the interest, to his uncle, and asked if he had received it. His uncle was impressed to see that he had paid the entire debt all at once and checked, seeing that the money had indeed arrived. His uncle asked where he had earned so much money, and the protagonist laughed, saying that it was very obvious because he had worked in the city. Dakai said that the protagonist's family probably only wanted to preserve appearances at the cost of suffering. But the point was, what was dignity worth? Because he already knew everything. The protagonist's family was made up of poor people, and that 51,000 must have been the savings of an entire lifetime, which probably meant that the protagonist had spent everything he had. Wang Ju told her boyfriend that she would walk the protagonist to the door because maybe he could not accept that the two of them would see each other so often, since they were going to get married, but they were family and needed to understand each other. Dakai agreed, saying that it was good to let him know his place because that way that frog would stop staring at swan meat. She ran up to Xing Wang, saying that they would be family now, so he did not need to cling to old feelings and act as if they no longer knew each other. She emphasized that the two of them were childhood friends and had grown up together, and she knew very well that he liked her. However, she had always considered him only her little brother, and she would soon be his sister-in-law, so it would be better for him to stop thinking about her that way. Because if people heard about it, it could be bad for his reputation and would go against common decency. Xing Wang laughed, asking if she really believed that he liked her, and told her to look in the mirror at least a little to better understand the situation. Wang Ju became irritated and shouted, asking what he had just said. The protagonist asked what she meant because they were not childhood friends. They had only spread cow manure around and caught a few frogs together when they were children, and now she was acting as if that was something special. He emphasized that he really had thought she was not the type who looked down on the poor and flattered the rich, because she worked hard all the time and had always been kind to others. Because of that, he had not expected her to be this kind of person, but apparently she was just very good at pretending. But that did not matter to him since the two of them had no connection of any kind. Wang Ju emphasized that she understood the situation now. Since the protagonist could not have her, he was now looking down on her. And this was a very annoying situation. But in the end, she was still his sister-in-law and he needed to understand, leave the past behind, manage to move on and grow up. Wang simply stopped responding and turned away saying that she was crazy, making her more and more irritated. She ran in front of him, stopped and asked who he thought he was, questioning whether he really thought he was better just because he was good at studying, because that was a joke. And he was still just some nobody working for other people, completely useless, saying that spending his life studying would lead to nothing. And he was the exact definition of that. She asked what it mattered if she looked down on the poor because she loved the rich. And that did not matter. With his uncle's family, she would live in a giant house and eat the best food, while he would live in a tiny space, paying rent in the city and sharing a bed with others. Besides, his mother was still in the hospital, and even if he could cover 50 or 100,000, he still would not achieve anything. Because of that, he should be a little more grateful to her for speaking politely to him, and not test his luck, because no one would put up with him with that kind of attitude. Wang asked if she was done barking because she was staring at the sky while doing nothing useful, as if that were something good. He questioned whether she really thought everyone was desperate to be with her, because not even frogs were as idiotic as she was. She tried to insult him, but the protagonist interrupted, saying that, indeed, he did not have that much money and was not as capable and charming as her boyfriend. But even so, he worked hard, was diligent, respected his parents, and did not look down on anyone who worked hard so he could take care of himself. He emphasized that he had always thought this was particularly good and extremely better than people like her, who only focused on that tiny piece of land. He told her to stop acting like a lunatic, look in the mirror, and face reality. The system appeared, saying that the host had made a swift cut and severed ties without remorse. Suck others dry emotionally, not yourself. The host was rewarded with an apartment under renovation in BU City. She continued pointing her finger at the protagonist, but he grabbed her hand and pointed it back at herself, saying that both she and her boyfriend should just keep flattering each other like a good couple and stop interfering in other people's lives. Suddenly, a car came speeding by and passed through a mud puddle, splashing dirt onto the protagonist. Dakai stopped and rolled down the window, saying that he had not seen him, because he was in a hurry to visit the construction site and ended up not noticing him. After all, he was now the big boss at the construction site, in charge of building the road to the town, so he was a little busy and did not have time to chat. Dakai emphasized that if he could not find a job, then he could go work for him and carry bricks like his cousin, because he could help. Wang thought that he finally understood why the roads were so terrible, and apparently his uncle really had a family full of talents. But apparently it was time to serve justice for his own people. At the town construction department, one of the workers was treating the protagonist very well, saying that he could feel free to go there for tea whenever he wanted. Wang simply thanked him for all his kindness. The system announced justice because the host had spent his wealth for the greater good, building for his hometown, and the reward was 100 property deeds. He asked how many deeds there were, and the system said that there were 100 deeds, and asked if he thought that was too little, but the rewards were based on his actions. Wang apologized to the system, saying that he was not questioning it because the system kept getting stranger, since apparently all the wealth in the world was about to become his. Back at the hospital, Wang offered an apple to his mother, and she was happy, saying that he was very thoughtful because he was even cutting apples for her. Suddenly, a doctor appeared, saying that the surgery had been a success and that, now that her indicators had returned to normal, he would arrange her discharge. Wang did not take this very well and said that his mother had just come out of surgery the day before, was still under observation, and had no reason to be discharged. He emphasized that he had paid the hospital fees and wanted to continue her treatment with every available option. But the doctor kept saying that she would be discharged and asked the nurses to help the patient pack her things. Wang stood his ground again, asking what he had just said. His mother became worried and the doctor continued acting arrogantly, saying that it was exactly what the protagonist had heard, and questioned whether he had not understood something, because the patient was better now. So he needed to hurry up and free the room for another patient since he should not waste medical resources unnecessarily. The doctor asked if he liked the hospital so much that apparently he wanted to die there. Wang slammed the knife onto the table, startling the doctor a little. He pointed at the protagonist, irritated, saying that he was holding a knife in a hospital and trying to cause trouble, so he needed to put the knife down or he would be taken away by security. His mother tried to get up, saying that she would like to go home because there was no reason to spend more money there and she was already better, since the doctor had said there were no problems. Besides, they could be more comfortable. Wang continued telling his mother that she had just come out of surgery and her wound had not healed yet, so she needed to be careful when moving. The doctor told the protagonist that his mother apparently had already understood, and a good son should listen to his mother. The doctor looked at the nurses and told them to make sure everything was clean without leaving a trace of poverty and bad luck there. The doctor left the room and the protagonist became irritated. He told his mother that they should not waste the apple and asked her to eat first, because he was going to tell his father to pick them up. But before that, he needed to take care of a few things. His mother kept telling her son not to fight with them, because ordinary people like them could not cause trouble, but the protagonist told her not to worry because he would not do anything. In the attending doctor's office, he was on a call saying that he had already arranged everything and that his friend's wife could come now. After all, even a twisted ankle should be taken seriously and could take up to 100 days for tendons and bones to heal. Dakai told Dr. Lee that he really worked fast. The doctor said that this was obvious because they needed to be quick, since that Xingwang was just a poor boy, so how could he compare with Dakai's generosity? They had delayed paying the medical expenses for half a month, and it was only thanks to Dakai's family that they had managed to cover the costs. Letting them stay longer would be a waste of medical resources, and it would all be thrown away. Dakai smiled and told him to leave things with the director, and that he would pay for dinner later to properly thank him. Dakai hung up the phone while thinking that maybe the protagonist really thought he could cause trouble. Lee also laughed and looked at the payment he had received, saying that this guy was very good at handling things. But the protagonist, who had been watching everything, realized that the doctor had received a bribe, and apparently they could play with money because money really could make the impossible happen, and now they had put that into practice. He went to the director's office and knocked on the door. When he entered, the director asked who he was. Xingwang said that he was just a family member of an ordinary patient. The director said that if he was sick, he could go straight to the registration desk because he was not seeing patients there. Xingwang told the director that he would like to discuss donating a building to the hospital. But the director was looking down on the protagonist, saying that if he had any problem, he could consult reception because he was very busy and could not walk him to the door. But as soon as he realized what the protagonist had said, he was impressed and questioned whether he really knew how much it cost to donate the construction of a building like that. The director thought that this young man looked very simple, and that his clothes probably did not even cost 200, so how could he donate a building? Maybe he was just joking. Xingwang told the doctor that he knew very well how much it cost because he had already looked into it and there was no problem at all, asking if they could continue the conversation. He thought that building a small building in the countryside cost only around 1 million, and currently that was nothing to him because spending a mere million to benefit people and solve his problems was very worthwhile. He continued telling the director that he understood that his ward was always full and that there was often not enough space to place patients, so he wanted to donate a building. First, this was to make things more convenient for patients who needed to be hospitalized in the future. That way, they could receive accommodation after surgery. Secondly, he would also like the director to investigate any corrupt practices inside that hospital. The director said that he truly understood that patients' families might have complaints about beds, but there was no need for suspicion. The director thought that maybe the protagonist was only there to find an excuse to report the hospital. Xingwang continued explaining that he also knew the director did not have much he could do, given the lack of beds. However, in that situation, some people took advantage to make dirty money, giving already scarce beds to special connections, abusing the debts of ordinary patients, and he thought that was very wrong. The director became a little irritated, stood up and shouted, saying that he had been in the administration of that hospital for years, as had the doctors of that countryside hospital, and he had never accepted bribes or gifts because they were very strict about red envelopes. Xingwang emphasized that his mother had just undergone major surgery yesterday and was in the recovery process, but today the attending doctor was forcing her discharge to make room for other patients. He emphasized that, as far as he knew, the next patient only had a twisted ankle and it was a simple treatment that could be done at home. The director said that the protagonist was probably just making it up, because even if that ward was overcrowded, they would not discharge a patient who had just come out of surgery. That did not align with the necessary medical procedures. And even if a patient insisted on being discharged, they would need a signed liability form. If the protagonist really wanted to continue with this story, he at least needed to present reasonable and factual evidence. Xingwang showed a recorder and asked the director not to get so stressed and just listen to that recording first. As soon as the director pressed play, the recording said that everything had already been arranged and that his friend's wife could come right now. It could take up to 100 days for tendons and bones to heal. They needed to be quick. That Xingwang was just a poor boy, so how could he compare with his generous family? They had delayed paying the medical expenses for half a month, and it was thanks to his family that they had managed to cover the costs. Letting them stay longer would be a waste of medical resources, and everything would be thrown away. The director questioned how he would know that the recording was not fake. The protagonist began to wonder whether the director was just naive or deliberately trying to cover everything up. Xinguang picked up his phone and said that even if he thought that recording was fake, the building was not. He called Chief Engineer Kang, saying that he would like to build a new building for the municipal hospital and asked if he had some time to discuss the project. The protagonist asked if Kang could go to the director's office to discuss the details with him, because that would be great and everything was arranged. The director stared at the protagonist, thinking that he could keep acting because he wanted to see how far this would go. Xing Wang put his phone on speaker and said that maybe the director did not believe that a building was falling from the sky, so he could explain a little. He handed the phone to the director, saying that it would not take more than a few minutes of his time, so he could not let a few minutes of stubbornness cost him an entire building. The director took the phone and said that this was Director Liu from the municipal hospital. As soon as Kang said something, the director was impressed when he realized that this really was Engineer Kang's voice. The engineer said that the director was very lucky to get a free building like that. Liu said that he understood, but now he needed to hang up. The director thought that this young man really was very rich, despite keeping a low profile. The two of them sat on the sofa, and the protagonist asked if the director believed him now, because he should also give an answer about the recording. After all, if he could donate a building to the hospital, then why would he fake a recording? The director emphasized that the recording alone was not enough evidence. Xing Wang said that if one building was not enough, then maybe he could donate two. The director was impressed by this, and the protagonist stood up, saying that he had no other requests and only hoped that the director would severely punish the corrupt doctors through an investigation into unfair practices inside that hospital, bringing back fair opportunities so that all patients could be treated by doctors. Liu agreed with the protagonist, but before he left, he asked if he could know his name. But the protagonist said that he was just an ordinary boy from a simple farming family, simply doing what was right for ordinary patients. So his name did not matter, but if he needed a name, he could just write Messenger of Justice. As soon as Xingwang left the room, the director picked up the phone and shouted for them to immediately bring the most recent discharge records, because he wanted to see which patients had been discharged after surgery. A short while later, one of the nurses went to the doctor and said that the director was waiting for him in his office. Li knelt on the floor in front of the director, begging not to be fired because he had elderly parents and young children to support and he could not lose his job. Liu asked what was going on because the doctor had elderly parents and children, but apparently the patients' families did not have all of that. A doctor like him, without any morality, needed to find another job because that municipal hospital could not afford people like him. The next day, Dakai was relaxing with his feet in the water, while his girlfriend praised him, saying that his career was booming and that they would soon be able to buy a house in the city. Suddenly, another man slammed the door open and shouted at Dakai, saying that he had said he had great connections and had even bribed a doctor. So how had his wife just packed her things and was already being sent away? His wife's injury had worsened because of all that mess, and she was so angry that she would not even let him enter the room. Dakai stood up, confused, telling him to wait a moment because the doctors probably did not know they were so close, but he would call and explain the situation. He tried calling the doctor, but the number he dialed simply no longer existed. In the courtyard of the protagonist's family home, several things were being delivered. His mother remained shocked, telling her son that he was hiring all those men and buying all that equipment, and that it must be very expensive. Xingwang explained to his mother that all of it had been paid for by the hospital, and that they had not spent any money. That Dr. Li had been fired for just cause, and the hospital was trying to compensate them, so they had arranged all of that for them. Besides, they were going out, and afterward they could enjoy themselves without worrying. His mother said that it was fine because she had finally understood the whole situation. Xingwang thought that he was doing good deeds without seeking recognition, just like Lei Feng, and that was very good. Suddenly, Dakai entered the protagonist's house shouting at him, asking if he was the one to blame, because he had gotten a hospital room for his friend and spent more than 10,000, and now it had all been for nothing. The protagonist's mother asked what he was talking about. Xingwang was happy because that idiot had just admitted everything. He shouted, saying that apparently it had been him after all, because he had been wondering why his mother, who had just undergone surgery, had been kicked out so suddenly, and in the end, his dear relative had spent 10,000 just to drive out his own mother. Dakai tried to cover it up, asking who wanted to drive out his mother, because it was normal to be discharged after getting better. Besides, he told the protagonist to stop pretending, because if he had not done something behind the scenes, then the hospital would not have done all of that for him. Xingwang said that this was because of the director, because he had exposed that corruption in the hospital, and he was compensating those who had been harmed. Dakai continued shouting at the protagonist, saying that he would not believe so many lies, and said that he needed to be compensated because the protagonist had no idea how long he and his friend had taken to build that connection. All his road construction projects had been introduced by him, so he did not even know how many packs of cigarettes he had given and how much money he had spent. And now that the protagonist had offended him, causing serious losses, he needed to take responsibility. Xingwang told Dakai that everything he was saying made no sense at all because he was a super rich guy, a big boss who made millions a year, so there was no reason for him to come there and extort money from someone as poor as him. The protagonist said that Dakai should ask himself how a guy like him, making less than 5,000 a month, having a small apartment in the city, and after paying rent not even having enough left to eat, as he himself had said, could have the power to interfere with a rich man like Dakai. And regarding all of this, it must simply be karma screwing over someone who acted arrogantly. While the protagonist was leaving, he emphasized that some people in life use so much dirty money that they began to believe everything could be solved with money since they did not believe there could be justice in that world. Dakai thought that the protagonist only knew how to talk, and screwed people like him would not have that much power. It must have just been bad luck, and because he was irritated, he had made bad decisions. He left saying that the protagonist's family would die poor. Xingwang watched him, thinking that this guy was just an idiot, and told his mother to keep walking. She became worried, saying that the boy had been very furious and asked if it was possible that he might harm their family. But Xingwang emphasized that he would very much like to see him try. While Dakai was leaving, he crossed paths with a car and thought that it might be Manager Kong. But he quickly changed his mind, thinking that he must have seen wrong because he would not go to such a remote place. Kong stopped in front of the protagonist's house and opened the door, thanking him for that road and that building. Xingwang was surprised by this and tried to smooth over the situation since he did not want his mother to know that he had paid for all of that. He said that the manager was very generous because he had seen his broken-down car on the road, was heading home early, and decided to lend a hand. He told his mother to look at how the big shots there were truly polite. Kong realized that something was wrong and ended up going along with it, saying that it was natural to help someone repair that road. He sat in front of the house while thinking that the protagonist was probably hiding his true identity from his parents. Xingwang went over to Kong and hugged him, telling his mother that he needed to handle a few things with him, so he would go inside first. He pulled the manager aside and said that he would like to keep a low profile on that trip because he did not want others to know about it, much less his family. Kang was even more impressed, saying that he finally understood. Apparently, the protagonist wanted to do good deeds without taking credit for himself. He thought that Xingwang was truly a great man, not exposing his wealth or showing off to others, only doing good in secret. Kong told the protagonist that everything he had asked for had already been done, and the protagonist praised him, saying that he really was efficient. Dakai called Mr. Zhao, but Zhao told him that, regarding the road repairs, he no longer needed to get involved. Dakai was surprised and slammed on the brakes, saying that everything had already been agreed on before, and that he had already arranged the workers' schedule. So how could he receive information like that so suddenly when he still needed to pay the workers' wages? Zhao explained that there were new regulations in the construction sector, and Dakai's qualification team had not passed the latest inspection, so they were in a very tight situation there. Besides, this was all they could talk about now because he needed to handle other things and had no time to explain everything. He hung up the phone and left Dakai unable to believe what he had just heard. Zhao thought that he had no other choice, since that boy had offended Manager Kong. Sometime later, inside a private room, Dakai brought some gifts to Zhao, asking if they had not already agreed before, because the road construction work would be subcontracted to him, and Zhao would only sit back and take his share. Zhao continued enjoying himself with his girls, and Dakai asked what he thought about adjusting the percentage from 30 to 40%, but Zhao just kept staring. Dakai thought that he had just hit the right point, because that guy probably thought the percentage had been too low. But apparently Zhao was just very stingy because at the last minute he was trying to apply pressure. Dakai smiled and emphasized that everyone knew this qualification review was only a formality because he could find a shell company and go through the process again, emphasizing that he would not put Zhao in a difficult situation. Zhao stood up angrily and slapped the gift on the table, shouting and asking who had said that those qualification documents could be forged. He questioned whether Dakai really thought a few cigarettes would make him commit a crime, and apparently Dakai thought he was talking to a starving man. Dakai began picking up the cigarette boxes from the floor and explained that this was not exactly what he meant, but Zhao remained irritated and asked what exactly he was trying to say, questioning whether Dakai thought all those words he had said were just nonsense and that he was trying to play hard to get. Dakai kept trying to apologize and said that he would raise the percentage to 50%. Zhao said that he had treated him like a brother until now, but now Dakai was trying to harm him. He ordered the security guards to get that boy out of there immediately. The security guard kicked Dakai out, saying that he should never go near Mr. Zhao again. A short while later, a man took Zhao to another door. As soon as he entered, he saw Xingwang and Kong sitting there. He began laughing and apologized for making them wait so long. Zhao thanked the protagonist, saying that he was very kind to the people of that town, so he would like to thank him for the funds he had donated for the road construction. But Xingwang thought that this guy was a hypocrite and an opportunist. Xingwang emphasized that it was nothing special, because he was not interested in the affairs of a messy village. He was only doing this because his parents were getting old and had trouble walking. So, if the road was bad and they were not careful, they could end up twisting their ankles, which would be very bad. He asked Zhao if that road would not fall apart within a year. Zhao thought that he would let it slide only because he was rich and asked how that could happen, emphasizing that the roads being built would definitely meet the protagonist's expectations. Xingwang was happy, saying that this was what he wanted to hear and that he would leave this responsibility to Zhao, hoping not to be disappointed. The system notified him, calling the host noble because he had completed the task of building roads and houses in his hometown in only 2 days and 1 night. Not only had he spent money generously, but he had also shown high moral character, and the system would reward the host with a bonus, hoping that he would never forget his original intention and remain true forever. Xingwang only wondered why the system had been so quiet over the past few days, but apparently it had been planning something very big. In the garden of the protagonist's uncle's house, Wang Ju was angry with Dakai, saying that he was lying there playing on his phone all day and had not even swept the floor or cleaned anything. She emphasized that if she had known he only talked big, and that getting the project was all a lie, she would have chosen the protagonist instead of him, because he was in the city to get real work opportunities. Dakai became furious and stood up, asking what she had just said. Wang Ju remained angry, saying that it was exactly what he had heard, because even a domestic bird could fly away and try something while he was being useless. If she were in his place, she would already be kneeling before Zhao if she had to. She could not believe how good he was at showing off, because he still had not done anything right. She started leaving the house, saying that she was going to find the protagonist, because they had grown up together and he would certainly take better care of her. But Dakai lost control and told her to stop immediately, grabbing her by the clothes. He slapped her across the face, saying that she was nothing but a shameless woman, because she had never earned a single cent in her life and still dared to criticize him. Meanwhile, at the protagonist's house, Kong handed a document to his parents, saying that some details were there and that they could look at them later. The two of them were a little confused and asked what it meant. Kong explained that the construction of that road would affect their property a little, because they needed to use 1 square meter of their land. And to express his apology, they were planning to build a house for the two of them as compensation. The two were surprised, and the manager said that if this was still not enough, then they could add a little monetary compensation as well. The two of them could not believe it and began thinking about when that village had become such a lucky place, because besides getting a new house for 1 square meter, they were also receiving an offer of money. They thought that this was too much luck, and the protagonist's mother said that the house was already more than enough, while his father shouted, calling out, saying that someone was going to build a new house for them. A few days later at the bus station, Xingwang was saying goodbye to his father and mother because he needed to go back. His mother told the protagonist that even if working in a big city was very difficult, he should take care of his health and not push himself too hard because the next time he came home, they would be able to move into a bigger house. Xingwang hugged her, saying that she should not worry so much because he would take very good care of his health. But now he needed to go, otherwise he would miss the ride to the airport. His father also said goodbye, saying that he would be waiting for him to come back. Xingwang sat in the waiting room while thinking that this trip had been worth every cent. Suddenly, Gao Wen appeared there and was surprised, asking what he was doing there. The protagonist explained that he had returned to his hometown to see his mother and was going back today. Gao Wen apologized because she had forgotten to ask earlier since she had heard that his mother was sick, and that he had left work because they had not given him leave. Because of that, she wanted to know how his mother was now. Xingwang told her not to worry so much because it was nothing too serious, and his mother was already recovering very well. Gao Wen said that it was very good to hear that, but that she was there because she had gone on a business trip since the company wanted her to change her image a little. Because of that, she had gone there to work with a rural revitalization company and had just finished now, so she was about to go back when she saw him. And apparently the world was very small since the two of them had met in a completely unfamiliar place. Xingwang laughed and said that it really was a great coincidence. Gao Wen asked if he already had any career plans and which company he was thinking of going to, but if he did not want to, he also did not need to answer that. Xingwang laughed and said that it was no secret because he was not going to another company but starting his own business. Meanwhile, he thought that he had even rented a building right in front of his former company just to irritate his former boss. Gao Wen was very happy to hear this and said that if the protagonist needed anything, he just had to ask her, because she knew some nice directors and photographers who were not too expensive. Suddenly, her phone began ringing and she apologized, saying that she needed to answer it. She thought that her boss was going crazy because he had already called 100 times in a day. As soon as she answered, Shui began shouting at her, asking if she really thought she was important just because she had made a little money now, and asking how she dared to ignore all the messages he had been sending her. He ordered her to get online now to compete with Jayade's team because they had been tagging her for half an hour. Gao Wen explained that she had already notified him an hour ago that she was about to board, and she believed that everything was fine. Her boss became even more irritated, asking if she still had not boarded the plane, because this had to be some kind of joke, and ordered her to do it before boarding. Gao Wen emphasized that she was already about to board and the next flight would only leave in 10 hours, and maybe she would not even be able to get a ticket at such short notice. Besides, she was on her rest time. But Shui asked if she was really trying to make him laugh with rest time in that industry, and asked if she really thought the company was helping her for nothing. If she missed the flight, she only needed to wait 10 hours at the airport and the problem would be solved. Gao Wen began getting irritated and said that she had already earned enough for that company because she had been at the top for 6 months, and no one was helping her with absolutely anything. Shui asked what that had to do with anything, because her contract was still valid and until it ended, she only needed to do what he told her. He continued taking advantage of women just because he was the boss. He told her to stop arguing and go online now, because if she said another word, he would consider it a breach of contract. The protagonist noticed that she was a little irritated and asked if everything was all right. As soon as Shui heard the protagonist's voice, he said that apparently she was with him, and now he understood why she was unwilling, because she probably was not even at the airport and must be naked on top of a bed. Gao Wen became embarrassed and asked him to stop spreading rumors, because she had already sent a photo of her boarding pass in the company chat as a report. Shui said that if this was true, then why could she not start a live stream to prove it? Because he would really like to see whether she was not in bed with Xingwang. She became even more embarrassed, and the protagonist took the phone, saying that there was only a contract termination fee, and asked how much it was, because he would pay it. Besides, that entire call was being recorded, and he would be sued for defamation. Shui asked how he could afford the contract termination fee, and told him to stop pretending to be rich. But the protagonist hung up on him, making him even angrier. Gao Wen asked if he was really going to pay the contract termination fee for her. She wondered what right she had to accept such kindness. She told the protagonist that actually the situation inside that company was still very good, because her boss only caused trouble once in a while. And right now, they would demand an absurd penalty for breaking the contract, so there was no need to let them gain such a huge advantage. She emphasized that she was also saving money to pay off that debt. Xingwang explained to her that she did not need to feel bad about it because he was also doing it for his own benefit. He emphasized that he was starting a media company right in front of the Meow Group and wanted to find familiar faces to help him in the beginning. So what could be better for gaining recognition than stealing the best talents from those idiots? Gao Wen was surprised and asked if the protagonist really meant that he was going to start a business to rival them. She was so impressed that she began wondering who exactly that boy was and how he could have so much money. The protagonist emphasized that the salary he could offer at the beginning was a pure commission model, with half of her monthly earnings going toward paying the termination penalty. After the contract termination, they would split the net income 70% to 30%. 30% would go to him and 70% to her. She was happy, saying that if he was not a kind person, then no one else in that world could be. Xingwang smiled and asked if she thought that percentage was too low, but she said that was not it and that this percentage was actually very high, saying that he did not need to help her that much. Gao Wen thought that a live streaming company giving a 50% split would already be very good, and the protagonist was paying her contract termination fee, so giving her 20 to 30% would already be normal. Xingwang told her that she was the only one in the Meow Group who had never looked down on him, so she had helped him a lot, and now he was only repaying all the kindness she had shown. Since she had treated him as an equal from the very beginning, it was natural for him to return all that kindness. Besides, he had a great eye for people and believed that she would have a bright future. For that reason, he was asking her to change jobs to help him make a lot of money, because he believed from the bottom of his heart that she would be able to bring in far more money than the termination penalty. Basically, he was only advancing the payment for her. Gao Wen was moved, thinking that the protagonist was clearly offering her a branch to save her from drowning. Even so, he insisted on making it seem as if she was doing him a huge favor. Happily, she smiled and said that she accepted. Sometime later, inside the Meow Group media office, the protagonist and she went to his former boss's office, and he angrily asked if she was really going to believe what that man said in bed when her mind was shaken by desire. Because if she kept following that idea and the protagonist could not pay, then she would be the one left with all the debt. Xingwang, irritated, told him to shut up, stop wasting time, and immediately call the legal department, because he was there specifically to terminate her contract and did not have time to waste there. Shui stood up, asking if the protagonist knew how much that girl was worth now and whether he could really pay her contract termination fee, because he had heard that he had recently made some money and was loaded with cash. But when poor people suddenly got rich, they could easily lose themselves. He touched the protagonist's shoulder and said that, as his former supervisor, he needed to remind him that sudden wealth was like a castle in the air and could disappear in the blink of an eye, because when he ended up in debt, his life would be over. Xingwang pushed his former boss's hand away and said that money was a renewable resource. The more he spent, the more he had, so he did not need to worry about it. And judging by how he was losing his patience, his former boss was probably truly afraid that the protagonist could pay the penalty. Shui trembled and realized that he had been exposed. However, he tried to show that he was still very confident, saying that this was not his company and that he was not the only one spending or making money there, so he should have nothing to fear. Xingwang took a deep breath and said that his former boss had little power and still used it to intimidate people, so he was truly worried about Shui's future. But the former boss asked what the protagonist was so proud of, telling him not to forget that he had once been nothing more than a dog under his command. Xingwang explained that actually he had been a legally employed worker who had signed an employment contract, and if he kept calling his workers dogs, then he would be sued because of it. Besides, he should remember the company's 5-year clause prohibiting the spread of false and defamatory statements or information that harmed the reputation of either party, valid even after contract termination. So he would like to emphasize that if he heard Shui spreading malicious rumors again, the right to sue him on Gao Wen's behalf would still be valid, and it would happen. A short while later, inside the meeting room, the HR director said that the contract for both parties was there and that they needed to sign it. Gao Wen said that it was fine. Shui asked if she was really going to sign because that boy had only managed to get a little money, and if she followed him just because of that, she would have a lot to regret in the future. Gao Wen signed the contract, saying that she did not need his concern because the contract had already been signed. Shui remained irritated and said that the termination agreement had already been signed and questioned when the payment would be made, asking the protagonist not to pretend to be generous just to get a signature and then disappear, leaving the mess to her. Xingwang showed his phone and asked what the hurry was, telling him to check, because the payment had been made 1 minute ago. Shui asked if he really had tens of millions in cash, or if he was just joking. But the protagonist told him to stop being an idiot because whether it had really been paid or not, he could personally verify it with the finance department. Xingwang looked out the window and said that being part of upper management was really nice, because the view from the building was excellent. He laughed and told manager He that they had a long future ahead of them. The system congratulated the host for understanding the true essence of spending money, because money only grew when it was truly spent wisely. Because of that, the protagonist had leveled up, going from not looking at price tags to terminating contracts without asking the cost. And the reward for all of this was 99,999,999. The protagonist saw that reward and thought that sucking that company dry was no longer just a dream. Outside the commercial building, Qing King ran over, calling the protagonist, saying that this was a huge coincidence. She told Gao Wen that she had just heard she had resigned and asked if they could meet in the future. Gao Wen did not know exactly what to answer, and the protagonist asked why that would not be possible. They were in that commercial building, and she could go there to the cafeteria for lunch. Qing Ting was a little lost, not understanding what was happening. But suddenly, the protagonist received a call and said that he needed to answer. As soon as he answered, a man said that his property certificate was ready and asked when he would like to pick it up. The protagonist said that he would go soon. The woman laughed and said that they would be waiting for his visit. Xingwang thought that he had almost forgotten he still needed to inspect that house. He told Gao Wen to take some time to rest and plan the future business, because he needed to handle a few things. She smiled and said that she would do her best, then answered Qing Ting's question, saying that Xingwang had paid her contract termination fee. Qing Ting said that she still could not believe that the former office handyman was actually a wealthy magnate, and one really could not judge a book by its cover. Meanwhile, at another company, a girl was saying that the VIP client was arriving and that they needed to stay alert so they would not disrespect him, because that was crucial for their performance. Because of that, they needed to make sure everything was perfect. The general manager said that he understood, and because of that, he would organize the reception immediately, ordering everyone to gather right away. The man said that Mr. Hong Xingwang, who had bought the 300 million house, was arriving, and everyone needed to go to the entrance to welcome him. They needed to make sure their clothes were appropriate and that they presented themselves well, because this was important for maintaining the reputation of Red Chung Real Estate. The man said that he was a very important guest, so they could not be careless. The girl became a little worried and asked manager Wang if he had any photo of this buyer because she was worried about greeting the wrong person. Wang explained that this young man was a mysterious magnet, so how could they have a photo? Rich people like that usually had a great presence. When he arrived, that place would be illuminated. He emphasized that she had been in sales for a long time, so how could she not have that basic judgment? She laughed and said that she understood. He touched something and shouted, saying that there was dust on his hand and ordered everyone to clean it again until not a single grain of dust remained, because they had to give the VIP client an excellent experience. A short while later, the protagonist finally arrived and looked at everyone, thinking that this was what he expected from the first-class real estate brand Red Chung Swan Bay. Even the sales office looked impressive. However, he did not know why all those people were there, and maybe they were just waiting for the company president. He entered alone, and when he looked inside, he thought that this sales office really was very large, but there was no one inside. Maybe everyone was outside, and this promising house seemed a little suspicious. He looked at the model, saying that the landscaping of that villa area was really beautiful, with a pool for each house, exactly like on television shows, but he still did not know where exactly his house was located. The girl from before came up to the protagonist and asked what kind of house he would like to see because she could show him around. Wang called Irene. As soon as she approached, he asked if he had not already told her that they were not receiving other clients and questioned why she was not properly taking care of the entrance. Irene said that this boy was still a client. Wang scolded her, saying that, according to his calculations, the VIP client should arrive soon, so everyone should go outside so the client would not feel disrespected. Irene stood firm, saying that this did not seem right because they had not even put up a notice. But Wang said that she was a very naive girl and that he would handle the situation himself. He looked at the protagonist and said that this guy probably did not even have 200 yuan in his pocket, yet dared to enter the Swan Bay sales office. He thought that the protagonist was interfering with the arrival of the VIP client, so they needed to get rid of him immediately. Wang approached, saying that some people should know their place, because if they could not afford it, they did not need to waste people's time and emotions. So, if the protagonist wanted to buy, he needed to do it quickly, because what was the point of looking around forever? Xingwang looked at Wang and asked if he was saying that to him. Wang simply ignored the protagonist and called Irene again, saying that the place was full of dust, so she needed to clean everything again as quickly as possible. Because if the VIP client questioned the cleanliness, everything would be ruined, so she needed to sweep it straight into the trash. Xingwang continued saying that how would he know if the place was good without looking, and whether it was suitable for him or not. The manager said that judging by his appearance, he seemed not to have even 200 yuan in his pocket, and he could not afford houses that cost 300,000 per square meter. Wang emphasized that he had already given him a chance to leave with dignity, but if he insisted on embarrassing himself, then he could not blame him. Xingwang said that the management there did not seem very good. Besides, there were people who judged by appearance, so he did not think those houses were really worth such a high price. The manager said that he was only being rude because he could not afford them. Suddenly, the protagonist's phone began to ring, and he answered. The woman from before asked if the protagonist had already arrived at the sales office and said that if he had any questions, he could ask manager Wang. As soon as Wang heard that voice, he thought it sounded very familiar. The protagonist asked who the manager was because if it was who he was thinking of, then Wang had said that he was embarrassing the place and was not worthy of buying a house. So maybe he really was not worthy and would buy somewhere else, asking if they could cancel the transaction immediately. The woman stood up anxiously and asked the protagonist to sit down, begging him to wait just a little, because she would be there in an instant. She thought that the manager had probably lost his mind and went downstairs angrily, thinking that there had probably been a misunderstanding. She went to her driver and told him to go to the Swan Bay sales office as quickly as possible. While she was in the car, she called and questioned what manager Wang Sheng had done, because if that mysterious rich client was offended, he would be in big trouble. After all, she had already told him to handle the matters related to the VIP client, but apparently he had forgotten to listen. He asked Director Lee to wait a minute because he could take care of it, but before he could say anything else, she hung up on him. Sheng looked irritated and shouted, saying that he had already ordered the area to be cleared, but no one had listened because the rich client must be very angry, thinking that they were receiving other people. Xinguang thought that judging by the look the manager had made earlier, maybe he could at least recognize his superior's voice, but apparently he had not understood. Sheng began pulling Irene's ear, making her cry while he shouted, asking what the point was of being pretty if she could not work properly because now that she had offended the rich client, he might lose his job because of her. She began crying and with a trembling voice told the manager that she was only doing her job. The manager went up to the protagonist and pushed him, saying that he was just a poor nobody and that he did not care what kind of connections he might have in Hongcheng because not even the president could help him. He ordered the protagonist to get out of there so he would not harm the business. Suddenly, the director arrived shouting at the manager. Sheng continued ordering the protagonist to leave immediately. As soon as he looked at the director, he said that she had finally arrived and tried to explain what had happened, but she simply ignored him and walked toward the protagonist. He thought that the director was probably irritated that the poor boy was still there, but the director bowed and called the protagonist Mr. Hang, introducing herself and saying that her name was Li Wanying, vice general manager of Hongcheng Real Estate, but that he could call her Xiao Li if he preferred. She emphasized that she deeply apologized for his unsatisfactory experience because the manager had been disrespectful, but she would like to ask for his forgiveness. Sheng could not believe that the director had allowed that boy to call her Xiao Li. Wan Ying stated that she would improve management to prevent such discrimination in the future. Irene was surprised to see that this boy was the VIP client they had been waiting for. The director continued saying that they treated everyone who came to the company with utmost equality and sincerely hoped that he could give them another chance. The manager still did not understand and asked the director if this was serious, questioning how that boy could be the rich client. After all, the mysterious client, the buyer of a 300 million property, how could he be so young and look so poor, without even branded clothes or a striking presence? So why would he wear such cheap clothes if he had so much money? Wan Ying went up to the manager and continued reprimanding him, saying that she had warned him several times never to underestimate any client, but he had ignored her words. Sheng thought that now he was screwed. She remained irritated, saying that apparently he had become arrogant just because he sold properties, and that starting tomorrow he no longer needed to set foot in that place. Sheng began crying and knelt down, saying that he had elderly parents and children to support, as well as a mortgage and a car, and that his daughter was sick and needed expensive medicine. He tried to insist even more, saying that she knew his situation very well and that he could not lose his job. Wan Ying emphasized that he should have thought about that before because they ran a business and not a charity, and it was better for him to reflect on his actions. He tried to beg the protagonist, saying that he had been wrong to judge him by his appearance and asking for another chance. Irene was already trembling, thinking that she would probably be next, and now she did not know what to do. Xinguang looked at Irene and told the director that this sales agent was very good, so she should be the new manager. Wan Ying smiled and said that she would do as he asked because there was no problem with that and asked if he would like to see the property. Sheng could not believe what he had just heard, and Irene was also shocked. Xinguang said that it was already getting very late and asked if they could really still see the property. The director said yes, and that she would personally take him there. Irene was still so shocked that she could barely move, asking herself if she had really just been promoted and whether this had to be a dream. The system told the protagonist that he was brave and very just, fighting against discrimination and ensuring justice, and the reward was a heart. He became confused and asked the system what a heart was for because he wanted more practical rewards. The system said that it was a personal compliment and that he should not underestimate the system's personal compliments because they could be useful at crucial moments. Xinguang began to smile, thinking that apparently the system even made jokes. In the courtyard leading to the villa entrance, the gates opened, and the director said that those were the villa staff, responsible for all security and property management. All of them welcomed the new master. Wan Ying asked him to follow her to set things up with the automatic gate recognition system, because it would be quick. She picked up a briefcase full of documents saying that all the property certificates and other documents had been prepared for him and that he could review them whenever he wanted. He looked at the documents and thought that a luxury property worth 300 million was a lot, because he was just a nobody from the countryside who had never seen such an expensive property before, so it would be good to take a look at those documents. As soon as he held the certificate in his hands, he stared at it and thought that the certificate definitely looked premium. He tossed everything back into the briefcase and asked the director to show him the way. She was surprised by that, but thought that this was expected of a magnate because he did not even bother looking at the deed of a 300 million property. She showed the way and said that he should be the first to enter. She continued explaining that they had hired incredible landscapers specifically for the design of that villa's private garden. The interior had been decorated by a renowned international designer. She kept observing him, thinking that the protagonist was a low-profile magnate who treated money like nothing and must be the young master of some secret family, probably afraid of exposing himself too much, drawing attention to the family, or ending up being kidnapped. Xingwang looked at the garden and thought that indeed the landscape was very beautiful, but considering his parents' preferences, he probably needed to plant a vegetable garden for the yard. Planting some cabbages and eggplants would make his parents like it a little more and feel more at ease. He continued looking around and thought that this was expected of a luxury residential area, but it would be even better if there were green beans or yellow melons planted there. Wan Ying said that if he was dissatisfied with anything, they could contact the designers to make modifications. Xingwang said that he would think about it for a while. He thought that he definitely needed some changes and that there were many impractical things because his parents would not feel comfortable that way. The system announced arrogance and emphasized that the host had found several reasons to dislike a 300 million property in just 1 minute, so he should not hold back anymore because he had just received a reward of 999 bonus points, and the system had also unlocked a new appearance. Xingwang was impressed, seeing that the system had even come with an appearance change. The system explained that when the host advanced to a new stage of life, the system also updated accordingly. Wan Ying thought that not even the landscaping created by the best landscapers had managed to satisfy him completely, and this was indeed the attitude of someone from a prestigious family. She began laughing and said that he was acquiring the crown jewel of that district and was still very young in age, so it was clear that his future would truly be limitless. She emphasized that the CEO had heard about his generous payment and had especially instructed all of them to treat him very well, saying that he would pay him a visit when he returned from his business trip. Xingwang said that she did not need to worry about that because he had not spent much, and it was nothing worth making a fuss over. This made her even more surprised, and with a smile she explained that this was their duty, because they very much hoped he would support them again in the future. But deep inside she was almost going crazy, thinking that he had casually spent 300 million and was saying that it was not much. This made her question what kind of mysterious family that boy belonged to. A little farther ahead, they finally arrived at the house, and she asked him to enter. Somewhere else, a girl was playing with some things and asked her uncle Zhang who had bought that property. Zhang said that it was a young gentleman with the surname Hang, and that apparently he seemed to be only in his early 20s. She was surprised, and the butler asked if she would like them to search that boy's background. But she said there was no need, because someone capable of casually spending 300 million on a property certainly was not an ordinary person. And if they investigated him, the protagonist might end up finding out immediately, and it would not be good to offend him that way. She asked him to select a suitable gift to pay him a visit another day. A grand celebration was taking place because, after 3 months of preparation, Duojin Media was finally open for business. Xingwang sincerely thanked the director for the great effort in training all of them over the past few months, and everyone had to work hard because the rewards would not disappoint their efforts. The other girls who had also been hired shouted, saying that they would not disappoint him and that they would work hard. Xingwang and Gao Wen looked at each other happily at the start of a new empire. 3 months earlier, Gao Wen had been a little confused, asking if she really would not need to do live streams. The protagonist explained to her that a great resource needed to be used in the correct place. At the moment, they did not have quality employees, so they needed to prioritize recruiting and training new talent, and half of the profits from the new streamers would go directly to her. Gao Wen was surprised and asked if that was not too generous. Xingwang emphasized that she was the founding heroine of Duojin. Besides, experience was needed in every field, and she was the most familiar with the live streaming process. She understood the concept of operations and knew how to attract attention. Without her, he could not do all of this. But once the company stabilized, if she wanted to return to working in front of the camera, there would be no problem at all. Gao Wen said that this time she preferred to stay behind the cameras and not expose herself. At work, Shui noticed something on his phone and found Duojin Media's account. He was impressed to see that they had signed a fairly large number of streamers. But he kept mocking the situation and emphasized that nowadays those who started low were not very good. Besides, apparently they really thought starting a company like that was easy. So he wanted to know what that company had to compete with him. Suddenly, a man entered Shui's office saying that this company called Duojin Media was right across the street and questioning what the meaning of that was and whether it was just to confront them. Shui called the man cousin and asked if he had already returned from his trip and whether his sisters-in-law were doing well, emphasizing that he had just been thinking about how to destroy that company to ease some of his worries. The man laughed, saying that it was just the same and that they needed to show that company who ruled that industry. Shui acted like a true dog on a leash and clapped his hands, saying that he understood. Meanwhile, inside his office, the protagonist was looking at some landscapes on his tablet, saying that designers nowadays only thought about style with no substance. He had received ideas from 3 or 4 of them, and all of them were horrible. Apparently, his 300 million property needed to be luxurious and creative enough. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and the protagonist asked them to enter. Gao Wen entered, saying that all the streamers had received a PK invitation from the Meow group all at the same time, and at least all of the opponents had 1 million followers and worked in the same field. She showed the messages in the work group and all the girls were saying the same thing, asking what they should do. Xingwang laughed, asking if this was that old trick, because apparently big streamers with millions of followers were going after girls with only a few thousand, and that was very shameful. He thought that his former company was stirring up conflict between the two companies only to encourage cyberbullying against the small streamers, an old tactic to show that they were the big company in the market. And this was indeed a good strategy, but it was a pity that they had picked a fight with the wrong guy. The protagonist asked if PK was ultimately just about spending money and told all the streamers to accept the challenge. Gao Wen asked if he was thinking of spending money by sending rockets to the newcomers. Xingwang laughed and asked if that seemed a little extravagant. She remembered what had happened to her and thought that the one who helped in times of need could have been Xingwang. The protagonist explained that money, in the end, was only money when it was spent. If it stayed still in his hand, it was just numbers. Gao Wen said that even so, he should spend wisely. After all, almost half of the donations went to the streaming platform. She thought that he had already spent tens of millions on her contract termination, and if her guess was correct, he had spent several more millions sending rockets to her back then. And even with a lot of money, he could not keep acting that way. But Xingwang remained excited, saying that life was very short. People came into this world with nothing and would leave it with nothing as well, so there was no reason to save so much. Besides, this was not money being spent for nothing, it was an investment. Because he needed hype like this, since as long as they managed it well, the company would immediately make a name for itself in the industry. The idea of rookie streamers defeating giants in that field was incredible. The audience would clearly be curious about how that was possible and would come running after them. Besides, he emphasized that she should trust her own ability to find and train new talent a little more. As long as people entered the live streams and most of them stayed, they would win. Because of that, she should not worry because he knew his limits and would make sure she made money reliably and safely. Gao Wen thought that the protagonist's perspective was different from hers, because he had been spending a few hundred million, and spending a few more million would not make any difference to him. Besides, he had already handled operations for the Meow group before, so she definitely could not compare to him in marketing strategy. Since he trusted her, then she should trust him too. Gao Wen went over to all the girls and they asked what they should do, because if they accepted the challenge, they would definitely lose. But Gao Wen, like a true coach and director, asked all of them to accept the challenge. The protagonist picked up his phone and began looking at the battle between the two companies. In the company group, some people were sending messages, asking if everyone was watching the battle between those two companies, and questioning what Duojin was thinking, because with such low support, they were going to lose. The rope always ends up snapping on the weakest side. But Xingwang's true concern was whether he should choose a more Hawaiian style or a slightly more vintage style. Gao Wen entered the room saying that the votes in the battle were off the charts because they had come prepared, and she had let the big spenders focus on those battles today. She emphasized that all the accounts were ready and the funds were set aside. Because of that, she wanted to know when they would make their move. Xingwang asked her not to be in such a hurry because it was not the right time yet. They needed to preserve their strength a little longer. He explained that she needed to wait for the peak of viewership, when the mockery was at its highest, and only then would they make their move. Gao Wen laughed and said that she understood, but emphasized that she was a little impatient. Xingwang explained that the mental preparation of the girls they had hired was crucial. He asked her to make sure they all remained calm until the end, because they needed to be at their best, and he would reward everyone who performed well. Meanwhile, Shui already had champagne in his hands, saying that victory was guaranteed, so they could celebrate early. He thought that it did not matter that they had lost Gao Wen, because they could still make millions in a short period of time. The real boss asked what there was to celebrate because that was only a small company and this had been expected. He thought that even though they were making a lot of money, breaking the contract with their #1 streamer and letting her escape was still a huge loss. He received a message, and someone said that he had just remembered that the girl was the streamer Gao Wen, because he had heard that someone had paid the multi-million contract termination fee so she could leave, and now he could not believe that she had created her own company. It made sense that the average level of Duojin's streamers was so high, and maybe that attack had been premeditated. The man became a little irritated, asking what this was and questioning why the manager had not warned him that Gao Wen had gone to Duojin. Shui thought that he could not let him discover that he had simply let that girl escape. He tried to smooth over the situation, saying that she had made a rich guy fall in love with her and pay the contract penalty. She had probably gotten too full of herself after receiving a few million in tips, thinking that she could become a boss lady or something like that. The boss said that it was fine as long as the manager had the overall situation under control, because they needed to win today's battle. Suddenly, someone opened the door in desperation, calling Boss He and saying that there was more news because the rivals were flooding the streamers with rockets and massive donations. Shui could not believe that this was happening again, because last time they had done this by focusing on one streamer, but now they were doing it with 10 at the same time, and because of that, he could not understand where so much money was coming from. He told the boss that they were clearly using fake accounts, because they had already exceeded 30 million in profit, so how could they surpass that? And even for someone who spent a lot, who would spend 30 million on a streamer? But the boss remained irritated and said that they could not lose this under any circumstances, asking if the manager understood. Shui asked his boss not to worry because it was probably just a wave of donations, and it would not last. But another employee began trembling, looked at him, and said that it had started again because they were once again donating a gigantic amount. The boss remained irritated and asked the manager if that was really just a wave. He ordered Shui to crush the rivals immediately. Meanwhile, inside the office, Gao Wen was watching the protagonist donate his money, unable to believe how he was spending. But the more he spent, the more the system congratulated him for spending and gave him consecutive million-level rewards. Gao Wen remained worried about the money and said that they were already winning, questioning why he needed to spend so much. She thought that the other side did not even have donation bars anymore and remembered exactly what had happened to her. And clearly, it had been the protagonist who had donated that to her. Besides, he had not even changed accounts, because the donor's name was exactly the same as the one that had sent donations to her. However, she thought that these numbers were already far too high, beyond what a second-generation heir from a rich family could spend. He sent another donation wishing prosperity, with 5,000 rockets all at once, and laughed, saying that they had never seen that much real money before because now it was time to show them how it was done. Gao Wen looked at the phone and thought that this was much more than just showing off. He called her, and she stood up ready. He asked her to always remember that they were aiming for only one goal, which was to reach the top, where no one would be able to compete. She said that she understood the purpose exactly. He said that now it was fine and that she could go raise the team's morale. Besides, she needed to remember never to forget the bet with the Meow group. He sat back down in his chair, thinking that this was the style of his dreams. He had finally managed to find the design he wanted. Nothing Hawaiian, French, or whatever else. This was the style he truly wanted. He decided to check how much he had received in system rewards from this little game. He began adding up the calculations and reached 10 billion, and that was exactly what he expected from that kind of system. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.